Yo, what's good, ladies and gentlemen? Aquilon here, and of course, welcome back to each and every one of you. This is Barrens Chat. This is episode 5. 5? Yeah, 5. Definitely 5. Sorry, I had to check the title of the podcast just to make sure that this is indeed episode 5, Epic Thulu. How you doing, bro? Welcome back. Welcome back, everyone. We've got a pretty interesting topic that we have to discuss today. Bugger Games, Dan, how you doing? Avedon, how you doing? Marco, how you doing? Or Tungu, how you guys doing? Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me live for, Barrens Chat. So what's the point of Barrens Chat, you may ask? In fact, you didn't ask, but I will answer anyways. It's to get your opinion on things. It's usually based on the news of the week, based on any sort of, discussions that we may or may not be having in the lore, and just, all over to touch a bit of base and to figure out, where do you guys fall on the spectrum of World of Warcraft enjoyers, haters, and pretty much everything in between, so that, we can have an actual conversation. Amandian, how you doing? Goofaloofus, how you doing? Mr. JD Zilla, how you guys doing? Welcome, everyone. I am very happy to be here with all of you. Another Friday night, 2 hours of nothing but World of Warcraft discussions, lore, and nerding out. So before we start, let me ask, how's everyone doing? How are you guys? Did you guys have a good week? Are you excited for the weekend? I mean, you kind of have to be, right? Friday is always like a special day. I don't know why this is, but every Friday, there's sort of like this hope that you just, you're excited for what tomorrow may bring, what the weekend may have in store for you. It's a magical experience. Probably comes from our childhood, because as a child on a Friday, you had nothing that you needed to do. You were going to go riding bike with your friends, and you were going to go play rugby in my case, or you were going to go out drinking when you were in high school. So you were going to go do some fun stuff. Now, when you're older, weekend is usually just like, oh man, I have to clean my house. And then as soon as I'm done with that, I have to go buy groceries, and I have a lot of work to do around the house. So obviously weekends are no longer the magical experience that they used to be, but on weekends you can still find time to no-life video games. And that is pretty much why we're all here, right? So I hope you guys are doing well. Pretty good. Looking forward to really jumping into Mythic Plus during the weekend. Nice, Nick. I'm pretty good, thank you. Absolutely ready for the weekend. Nice. I'm doing great. Good end of a good work. Nice, bro. I'm all right. Started to touch retail again. What about yourself? I'm doing very well. Thanks so much for asking. I will only be getting back to retail next month when the story launch, right? So there's an actual quest line that's going to be launching with some story. And then obviously I'm going to be no-lifing Mist of Pandaria remakes. Like a crazy person. Because I'm really excited for that. But in terms of Season 4... it's been a pretty muted launch of Season 4 for me, just because I don't do any of the things that launched during Season 4. I don't raid. I don't do dungeons. I have no interest in any of those things. So for me, it was basically just, I don't care. But I am super excited for what's to come. Mr. Pandaria remix, I think, is going to be super cool. I'm really interested to see how the experiment plays out, because I think there's a lot riding on the future of Mr. Pandaria remix and how well it is going to perform. So I'm super excited for that. Matthew, how you doing, bro? Another week closer to the War Within. Oh. And oh boy, is the War Within shaping up already to be just a fucking banger. Excuse my French, but it is. It just looks like it may be a banger. Gonna grind out the last 8 renown in Plunderstorm tonight. Nice, Dan. And how are you enjoying Plunderstorm, or are you literally just doing it for the renown? Miracles, how you doing? Alpha Sigma, how you doing? Tiny Blaze, how you doing? Ready to raid ST on my Resto Sham on Sunday, then get world buffs and wait for next raid on the mage. Raid logging in SOD and waiting for Cataclysm. Ah, a classic player. Nice. I find it very interesting. There's like a bunch of classic players that watch my content, even though I don't cover anything to do with classic. I famously don't really make any videos about classic, and yet there's a bunch of classic players that love following. I like classic for what it represents. More stuff in WoW is almost always going to be a good idea, but I don't play classic myself, so I can't really make content on that because I have no idea. Plunderstorm was fun with a group, less so solo, but I made it all the way to max renown and enjoyed it. I did a lot of solo Plunderstorm, and I must say, for a first attempt, I thought Plunderstorm was really well done. Battle Royales tend to be very difficult to make and to really get right. And I thought that for a first attempt from World of Warcraft, given the engine and that the engine was actually never built to do what Plunderstorm is trying to do, I thought it was phenomenal. And I cannot wait to see what the iterations of Plunderstorm is going to be, because I do think a little bit of more time in the kitchen, some cooking, we could probably get like insane content coming from Blizzard in the vein of Plunderstorm Battle Royales and, you know, that sort of stuff. You do great lore content. Thank you very much, Epic Dude. I appreciate that. I enjoy it, but only a few games at a time. Then I get back into normal game. That's fair enough. That is absolutely fair enough. All right, ladies and gentlemen, shall we get into the first topic of today? How many of you saw my video from yesterday? Just me? All right, no problem. I will do a quick recap. So there was a very, very, very good interview that I want to talk to you guys about because I really want to get your feedback on it. So the interview is between Maria Hamilton and Holly Longdale. Now, I want to start off by just giving Blizzard mad props, and I would love it if you guys could give some hearts in chat for Blizzard specifically. This whole thing, this feedback, this candor from Blizzard really started in Dragonflight. But in Dragonflight, what we got was Blizzard being very open to communicate with the player base about what was going on in the game and the plans that they had and listening to feedback and taking that feedback on board. So it was pretty good. You know, it was a new thing for us WoW players because Blizzard have never been that open-minded before. They've sort of always kept their cards very close to their chest, only did a couple of distinct interviews, and then that's pretty much what you got. And in Dragonflight, really, we saw Blizzard just doing the rounds. You know, wherever some big new update to the beta or the alpha launch, there would be like 5 or 6 Blizzard interviews from developers. And then, you know, and this continued right up until launch. And then in launch, Blizzard did like a massive amount of rounds for Dragonflight. It was really, really fun. But it wasn't candid insofar as business is concerned. On the business side of things, Blizzard still played their cards very close to their chests. We didn't actually know what was going on behind the scenes. So first thing we see is Blizzard actually revealing player numbers. For the first time since Mists of Pandaria, Blizzard actually just reveals how many players is currently playing World of Warcraft, which they didn't have to do. Although now I think Blizzard cares a little bit less about players actually knowing how many people play World of Warcraft. I don't expect them to do this yearly, by the way, but I do think they care a little bit less. Because under Activision, the last thing Activision wanted was for investors to start panicking because, you know, World of Warcraft's subscriber numbers have dropped. And that tended to happen. As soon as they saw 1 million players stop playing WoW, you would actively see the share price go, ooh, you know, a little bit down. So obviously Activision put an end to that immediately. Now, with Microsoft, I highly doubt that a dip in World of Warcraft player numbers will move Microsoft stock. Blizzard is now a very small company in a very large corporation. So it doesn't matter as much. So I think they're more willing to be a little bit more open about how many people are actually playing WoW. So that's the first thing. But then you look at Holly Longdale's interviews. She had one interview with Mr. GM and then another one 3 days ago now with Windows Central. Dude, the stuff that she revealed in that interview is actually a little wild. It's actually a little wild. Just how open she was about the failings that Blizzard had had. Now, obviously, she still did the whole, you know, she was media trained, so you can expect to have a bit of corporate speak in there and a bit of, you know, she is admitting that they made mistakes, but not in such a way that it puts Blizzard in too much of a bad light. But one of the key things that stood out for me about the Mr. GM interview was the fact that Blizzard just straight up admitted there's an entire player base that they completely forgot about. And that is what they like to call midcore. Now, I will get into explaining what exactly midcore means. I'll explain everything so that you guys can understand. We'll get into all of that. And then the interview with Windows Central, if you take the interview with Windows Central and you put it together with the interview with Mr. GM, there are some phenomenally interesting things that come out of those interviews. And we're going to be discussing those today. And then, of course, we have to talk about the elephant in the room as well. BlizzCon. There is no BlizzCon. Can I quickly ask, initial thoughts before we talk about this? How do you guys feel about the fact that there is no BlizzCon? The more transparent Blizzard is nice, and everyone seems much more excited about their involvement in the development. Dan, that is actually something I picked up as well. The developers seem a lot more hyped about what is to come. Like, there's an actual... It looks as if they enjoy the game now, whereas previously it almost looked like they were just doing it because some fuck told them to do it, right? Some suit came to them and said, you're doing an interview now. So they would just show up. But, you know, now it actually looks as if they're a little excited. They care about this game and they want to see it succeed. So that is obviously really good. Kind of indifferent to the lack. Sadness, I want to see more Metzen. All right, so many of you pretty much saying, hey, and it's okay that they present next year. So I want to start off by saying I highly doubt that it will come back next year or even the year after that. If you go to Blizzard's response here, let me just quickly find it because I do have it here. So if you go to their response over on Twitter, I posted this on Twitter. But after careful consideration over the last year, we at Blizzard have made the decision not to hold BlizzCon in 2024. This decision was not made lightly, as BlizzCon remains a very special event for all of us, and we know many of you look forward to it. While we're approaching this year differently, and as we have explored different event formats in the past, rest assured that we are just as excited as ever to bring BlizzCon back in future years. This suggests, to me at least, that Blizzard isn't planning on doing a BlizzCon soon. And I recognize that sounds weird, but it sort of feels like Blizzard may actually change up the way they do things. If you think about it, we're going to get The War Within. It's going to launch towards the end of this year. By next year, we may be in time for Blizzard to start announcing Midnight, although it may still be a tad early for Midnight, and Blizzard may actually decide not to announce Midnight at next year's BlizzCon. That means that there will literally be nothing to announce at BlizzCon. From my understanding, at least, reading everything that there is to know about Blizzard right now, effectively, Blizzard's roster at the minute of video games is Diablo 4 in kind of active development and World of Warcraft in active development. Hearthstone is doing Hearthstone things and, you know, it is what it is. Overwatch is basically struggling to convince even its creators that it needs to exist still. So Overwatch is really struggling. Diablo 4 is not doing well. It is now... It sort of went from being a bad game that players were hoping were going to get fixed at some point to just being a bad game, where players have now decided that that Diablo is bad, and now there's almost nothing that Blizzard can do at this point to bring it back. Because once players have decided this game is bad, they're not even going to come back, right? Because why would they? And yeah, we do have the Xbox Showcase, which is part of Xbox. You know, that's a much bigger event. And I would love to see a WoW stage or a Blizzard stage at the Xbox Showcase. Because, yeah, that's going to be cool, right? So maybe they feel like they don't need BlizzCon as much as they used to in the past, especially since they're now part of this much bigger ecosystem. And obviously, you can imagine with Xbox now taking over, there's going to be some time where everything needs to stabilize. Everyone in the company needs to figure out exactly where do they belong in this entire thing. So I kind of get it. I kind of get it. That Blizzard is sort of saying, look, let's put BlizzCon on ice. Because here's the thing that I think a lot of people don't know. Blizzard makes no money off of BlizzCon. BlizzCon 100% costs Blizzard a ton of money. They don't make money. This is part of the reason why last year they made it free for everyone to watch online. Just because even when they charged money for the online tickets, it didn't make much money. So there was just never really, like, Blizzard just accepted BlizzCon costs them money. BlizzCon is just a gold sink for Blizzard. And they accepted that. They accepted there's no real way to monetize BlizzCon. It is supposed to be a celebration of World of Warcraft and of Blizzard games. And I think they just sort of accepted that is what it is now, right? So I wonder if we'll see BlizzCon. Like, I wonder in what we will see BlizzCon back. I just wonder in what format we'll see BlizzCon back. If Blizzard is going to continue to make it this big hoo-ha thing, or maybe Blizzard and Microsoft wants to do a sort of Xbox showcase merger where, you know, instead of having BlizzCon for 3 days, you have the Xbox showcase for 3 days, and, you know, Blizzard gets a whole day and a whole stage to themselves to sort of, you know, celebrate whatever is BlizzCon. That could probably just bring in a lot more eyeballs. It could put a lot more people in touch with Blizzard games, specifically if you think about the ecosystem that Microsoft has that is part of their company. So yeah, I think that might be something that we could look forward to. Because yeah, right now there's just not much to announce when it comes to BlizzCon. Do you like the new Shadow Priest void effects? Zariel, I've seen them. They're fine. I don't really pay too much attention to class animations until it finally goes live. I've burned my fingers too much in the past where I get super excited about some new spell effect and then it gets completely nerfed as, you know, as we approach, because it had visual artifact issues or whatever the case. So I'll get excited if it launches because it does look really cool. I won't play a priest. Priests are just budget warlocks. Everyone knows that. But I still thought it looked really cool. TJ, yeah, I think that would be awesome. As someone that plays multiple games, and I do love a lot of Xbox games, not the console, but Microsoft games, I would love to see more like an Xbox showcase that takes place over like a week, and you have a Bethesda stage, and you have an Obsidian stage, and a Blizzard stage, and you have all of these stages, and basically it's just like a week of celebration of everything that Microsoft owns. You know, eventually the American president can walk out on stage as well, because they own him probably too in some way. So yeah, you know, it's an exciting time, I think. And it could be really cool from my perspective, at least. Anyways, that being said about BlizzCon, and I see that many of you have the same feelings I have. BlizzCon is an institution. We don't want to see it go away. And so I do think it will stay, but it will probably come back in some different form. We'll have to wait and see. But I feel you guys. Believe me, I'm right there. So let's shift to more, I guess we could say, hard-hitting conversation and hard-hitting topics. So, back to Holly Longdale. If I were to ask you what type of player is a mid-core player? Holly Longdale used this word in her interview with Mr. GM. And since then, I've had a lot of comments from people asking, what is a mid-core player specifically? How many of you know or think you know what a mid-core player is? Quit during BFA in 2019 when Classic was announced. I played casually, Mythic Plus and crap, have 5 70s in retail. Did some LFR and a couple of normal raids in DF. It's just very different from Classic. Oh yeah, no, it is absolutely different. That's true. Think it's on a rogue raider. I do hard content with friends, but really never high. Normal raider between a casual and hardcore. All right, so a working father. Probably to some extent there is some truth to that. Working fathers. Okay, so let's just first define. And I want to be clear here, this is my interpretation of what a mid-core is. The issue is that in gaming, these terms are incredibly badly defined. The terms that everyone sort of knows is casual, semi-hardcore, and hardcore. And those are the acceptable terms. Everyone knows that. And some people will call themselves hardcore when they're really not hardcore. Other people will call themselves casual when they're really not casual. And the problem really with these terms is there is no real underlying agreed upon definition. So if you were to go to, you know, like dictionaries or definition places where they try to define it, every single place will have a different acceptable definition of what they think a casual is versus a semi-hardcore player versus a hardcore player. And now, of course, entering the ring is the mid-core player, which is a distinct type of player to all of the others. Now, I thought about this long and hard. It took me almost 3 days to nail down what I believe is the perfect representation of what these different types of players look like. And I'm gonna use paint, because I like using paint, in order to explain this. So I have broken down the way people play the game and the fundamental foundation of how people play the game into 3 categories. Intensity, insofar as the intensity or the skill intensity of the content that you do, right? So what is the skill ceiling of the content that you do? How much time do you spend on the things that you do? And what is the level of your determination? In other words, will you give up a birthday in order to do this other thing, right? So determination, and how hard are you willing to work in order to achieve your specific goal? And that is, I think, the fundamental underlying principle of all of these different play styles within a game. Because almost every single thing that you do in a game will have a certain amount of intensity or skill ceiling to it. And I could probably do this, right? So we could probably do just skill ceiling, right? So intensity, skill ceiling. I wonder, is ceiling spelled correctly? We'll just run with that. So skill ceiling versus intensity, right? Or intensity. Mythic Plus, for example, +5 is going to have a much lower skill ceiling than a +15 or a +20. It's also probably going to require far less time than a +20 or a +25. And it's definitely going to require much less determination, but not necessarily. So that's why I think these 3 is the best foundation for us to work on. Now, what I have figured out thus far is that for the hardcore player, so if you are a hardcore player, your graph will look something like this. So you are very high in intensity skill ceiling. In other words, you do very hardcore content. You are prepared to spend an obscene amount of time making or achieving these very high skill ceiling content and beating the content. And your determination is of such that you will actually postpone real life stuff or move your real life around in order to achieve your goals. So you are very high in all 3 of these points. For the semi-hardcore player, it will probably look a little bit more like this in just about every single direction, right? So it can look like this, or it can look a bit like this. But basically, the point I'm trying to make is, it is 2 out of 3. So the semi-hardcore player will maybe do +15s or +20s, but they don't have as much time, right? So they do have the determination, and when they can move their life around, they will move their life around, but they're not going to do too much in that sense. Or, you know, maybe the stuff that they do isn't necessarily as high skill ceiling wise, but they're still very much determined and they do have a lot of time on their hands. So it's 2 of the 3, not 3 of the 3 as with the hardcore player. And then the casual player is usually a bit more like this, and it can go literally in any one of these directions, right? So this is the type of player that they have 1 out of 3. Maybe they do very high skill ceiling content, but they have almost no time and very little determination. So they rarely, if ever, hit the highest ceiling, but they hit the highest ceiling possible given the lack of time and lack of determination that they have. This would be a very casual player. Almost always casual players won't opt into intensity skill ceiling types of content. And so what you'll see from them is sort of like a this, right? So you'll see more like a this from them, or like a this from them. Very little in terms of intensity. Maybe time, not that much determination. Maybe determination, not that much time. So that is a casual player. What is a semi or a mid-core player then? Now, before we go, do you guys agree that this makes sense? Now, of course, you can add a number of names to this, right? So time, determination, there's a bunch of other subcategories that fall into all of those. But does that make sense, at least on the whole, to you guys? Sort of trying to define these very loose terms that we throw around in video games, because oftentimes we just use the word casual to insult someone. Let's be real. You don't actually try to make sense of it. Makes sense, but I slightly disagree. I think midcore is... I've not defined midcore yet, Avedon. So you cannot disagree with me there, unless, of course, you are destined to disagree no matter what I say. I have not spoken a word about midcore yet, so I don't know how you would disagree with me on midcore. So I will read your disagreement with me on midcore when I finish talking about midcore. It works when it comes to setting up a common ground definition. That's all I'm trying to do here. I'm not trying to get into the minutia of defining these, because if I'm gonna do that, I'm gonna need a whole list of characteristics and definitions and sort of play styles in order to really define what each of these are. I chose these three because all of the things that I came up with basically falls under one of these three categories, right? And it can play into one of these three categories. So what I would view as a mid-core player is that. It is a player that has some intense skill, high skill ceiling content that it does. They have some time, they have some determination, and it is a very balanced approach between all three. They're not as high as the hardcore player. Unlike the semi-hardcore player, they do have all three, but they're very much in balance with one another. They don't lean too much to one or the other. This, in my opinion, is probably the largest group of players within any game. The mid-core player. This is the player that they will attempt some hardcore raiding because they do like a challenge of some kind. They will attempt to spend, 10, 15 plus hours a week playing the game. And they have some determination if they have a goal that they wish to achieve in the game. They are more than happy to, sort of move things around so that they can actually play the game. The problem with these types of players, the mid-core player, is while they do love a challenge, so unlike the casual player that oftentimes don't want to engage in challenging content, right? So your casual player, the reason the casual player will not even look at intensity is because they have no interest in engaging in high skill ceiling type of content. So they really hover around the maybe normal dungeons, normal raids, heroic dungeons, maybe a little bit of heroic raiding, but that's it. They're never going to attempt a mythic boss. They're never going to even set foot inside a mythic plus higher than +5 because they actively steer clear of that stuff. They would rather just, have some fun and play the game that way. They don't want anything that challenges them too much because, well, that's not how they play the game. That's your casual. The mid-core player does want the challenge, but they want the challenge to respect whatever time they have and whatever determination they're willing to put into it. The problem with that group, and this is what Holly said herself, they never even knew that that group existed. It's the data that ultimately proved to them that there is a very large group of players in World of Warcraft that have no content made for them. Because from Blizzard's perspective, the only content that people were really engaging in, and the reason for that is that's easy data to get hold of, was dungeons and raids and PvP, and a little bit of world questing every once in a while. So they never even knew that there is this giant amount of players that basically, and this is Holly's words, by the way, this comes from the Windows Central's interview, there are a massive group of players that log in every single patch, do the story, so play the patch and the quests, and then immediately log out, and they don't see them again until next patch. There's a massive group of players that play literally patch content story, boom, next patch content story, and then immediately log out. So this sort of challenges a couple of assertions. The first is whenever people would tell me that the casual players are fine in World of Warcraft and there's a shit ton of casual content in World of Warcraft, it's nice when the president of Warcraft says, actually, no, we have no content for casuals and midcore players in World of Warcraft. And it's like, oh, I guess I was right. But then the other thing is it sort of shoots everyone in the dick that says that players don't play the game for story. As it turns out, there is a giant group of players that play the game for story. They just don't play the game because there's just not enough story. So they log in, they do the story, they log out, and you never see them again. That's why you don't hear from them. You don't hear from them. Because they don't watch YouTube videos. They don't go on Twitter to check out the story of WoW. They don't raid. They don't write on the forums. They log in, they play the story, and they log out. And then they go play other games, or maybe they don't even play games. They go about their lives because there's no content for them. There's nothing in WoW that exists for them. Now, Blizzard is trying to make some differences there. You know, we have Delves, for example, that's coming in. We have the Mist of Pandaria remix that's coming in that I think is going to be pretty cool for midcore players. We have Plunderstorm, right? I think Plunderstorm is actually a really good type of content for your midcore player because it does have that skill requirement, right? You can spend as much or as little time in it as you choose, and it all boils down to whatever determination you have for it. Therefore, Complete Circle, Plunderstorm works for that. Delves can work for that. We'll have to see exactly how Delves are going to be implemented. But the main thing, the main takeaway that I have for midcore players is these are players that would love high intensity, high skilled content if they could do it on their own terms. And I would very much put myself in the position of a midcore player. Because I don't like playing casually. I don't like it. If you told me, hey, play World of Warcraft and collect mounts, I'd rather you punch me in the nuts. It would be far less painful and it would be over far quicker. So I would rather you punch me in the nuts. I don't want to farm mounts. I couldn't give two shits. Oh, but you can do all of these transmog stuff. Shoot me. I would rather that, because that would again be far less painful than whatever the hell you're trying to do to me by making me farm transmogs. I don't care, right? Collect pets, yeah, that's not happening. I would be one of the few people that would not cry if pets were removed from World of Warcraft. So that's definitely not happening. I just don't have content. But if Blizzard gave me content, if Delves actually provided me with a challenge, you bet your ass I will spam the living shit out of it. If Blizzard brought Torghast back and actually made it into a proper roguelike, you bet your ass I would be playing the living shit out of it. Because I love the challenge. But I want to be able to engage in the challenge on my own terms. I don't want to join a guild because now I'm no longer engaging in it on my own terms. I don't want to have to grind for it because now I'm no longer playing on my own terms. I will decide when I play, but when I play, I do like to have a challenge. I do like to have to brainstorm. What am I doing next? What am I going to do here? How am I going to get better? And I think that is, in my opinion, the core definition of a mid-core player. Someone that loves intensity, loves skill challenges, but wants to engage with it on their own terms. Based on those definitions, how would you guys define yourselves? Are you casual, mid-core, semi-hardcore, or hardcore? Where do you put yourself? Where can I find Manker's wife? She dead, bro. Midcore, all right. Midcore. Total midcore, semi-hardcore. I don't remember all the definitions. Oh, shit, Kimmy. All right. I'm not going to go over the game. That's a long-ass discussion. Mid as fuck. Semi-hardcore, mid. Just based on this chat, look at the amount of people that are saying that they're midcore versus the amount of people that are semi-hardcore or even hardcore, right? This should tell you just how many players Blizzard leave on the table as a result of their lack of content for the midcore audience. For those players that do want the challenge, but want it on their own terms. So I am loving the idea that Holly and the team have finally realized that there is a giant gap. Because here's the fun thing about content designed for midcore players. It automatically appeals to all of the other player groups alongside it. It's the only real type of player and content matched to the type of player that appeals to all other types of players at the same time. None of the other player tiers can boast the same thing. Content that is purely made for hardcore players will very rarely appeal to casual players or even necessarily to midcore players. Content that is made fundamentally for the casual audience is very rarely going to appeal to the hardcore or even the semi-hardcore player, and sometimes not even to the midcore player. But all content that you make for midcore players will automatically appeal to casual, semi-hardcore, and hardcore. And the reason for it is, if delves can scale high enough and become difficult enough, do you really think that hardcore world-first raiders aren't going to go into delves in order to try and defeat the highest possible delve in the game? Of course they're going to, because it's a hardcore challenge, they play because of the challenge, and this provides them with a challenge that they want to defeat. If Blizzard brought back Torghast in a true roguelike experience, do you really think that super hardcore, mythic, world-first raiders aren't going to try their hands at it? Of course they are, because again, it's the challenge that they play for. The same with the semi-hardcore player as well as with the casual, because for midcore players, they really do fall into all of the other characters, or really encompass all of the other categories of players. And if Blizzard truly realized that this is the largest group of their player base, I think we can expect a lot more content to come for these players. I think there should be Transmog, Alivar Plus, level gear, and mounts, as well as pets connected to exploring the world in the game by foot. Roland, I'm far less interested in reward-based gameplay, because I think reward-based gameplay creates an incredibly toxic type of gameplay, and it's one that World of Warcraft has been caught in for a long time, and you can see it. If you told players Blizzard should just release something for fun, the player base almost has a mental breakdown. Like, players literally get anxiety and sort of have panic attacks when you tell them this thing doesn't need content, it doesn't need rewards, they should just make it for fun. Because the first thing the players ask is, well, why would I do it if I'm not getting anything from it? It's like, well, maybe because it's fun? No, I don't play the game for fun, I play the game for all the purple pixels. And it's like, well, the fuck are you talking about? Games are supposed to be fun. You should not be playing a game just for the shit that it gives you. You should be playing a game because it's fun. If it does give you stuff, the stuff that it gives you must be on top of it. You do not incentivize people to explore your world by adding all sorts of rewards into exploring the world. You incentivize players to explore the world by making exploration of the world fun. It's much harder to do because fun content is very subjective, but you can do that with a complete overhaul of something like, for example, the archaeology system. Archaeology profession should become a profession. It should be a complete overhaul. And I believe that there are enough bits and bobs and pieces in World of Warcraft already that if you put all of those things together, you could make a banging archaeology profession. Think of archaeology as World of Warcraft allowing you to become the Tomb Raider in World of Warcraft. So the archaeology profession starts with you killing a mob, and the mob drops a map, a treasure map. So now you look at the treasure map, and the treasure map shows a place on the map. You find the place on the map, and you go there. Suddenly you find there's a cave here. You go into the cave, and this kicks off a massive, massive story of you going through this cave, finding more clues and things along the way, revealing little bits of history of the people and the things that used to exist within this area. And then you get all of these puzzles, jumping puzzles, the puzzles that we used to get in Legion. I don't know if you guys remember that, where you have to look at the pattern on the floor, and then you have to trace the pattern on the floor, and then you have to fly through all of these different rings, and you have to get shot up into the air and then drop through the rings like we did in Shadowlands and Bastion. All of these different puzzles merged into a single type of play. Maybe even the river rafting that we did in Dragonflight, you can incorporate that into it. The climbing the mountain, you can incorporate that and actually make it challenging. All of these different challenges, but in a single dungeon-esque type of playthrough, that as the player goes through it, you unlock different histories about the world around you, and right at the end, there's some really cool events, some really cool lore that drops, and you get maybe like a cool new piece of equipment that makes the next archaeological expedition that you go on a little bit easier, right? So there's an actual progression system that you have. Maybe there's even a talent tree that we invent for archaeology that allows you to do things, a grappling gun, for example, and stronger hands so that you can climb longer. All of these things. It's an entire mini game within the game that immediately incentivizes the player to go out and explore, because there's an actual thing to discover within the world. By simply adding rewards, so saying if you explore the whole game on foot, you will automatically get a pet. This is reward-based gameplay design, and it creates toxicity. It creates a very toxic relationship between the player and the game. Because I don't want to do the content, but I want the reward. So now I'm forced to do content I hate so that I can get a reward that I want. No one should ever play a game they hate just because they want something at the end of it. That's why jobs exist. If you want to do something you hate just for the reward at the end of the day, go to work. Go slave to your boss, because that's why most of us work, right? And that I think is baseline why I wouldn't want reward-based gameplay, but rather incentivize me to go out because it's fun, because I really want to know what is on the other side of this thing. It's much more difficult, but like I said, I think it can be achieved. Adding mob scenarios tied to a profession. Effectively, you're going to use island expeditions, you're going to use mob scenarios, and you're going to merge it with a bunch of other mini games that's existed throughout World of Warcraft history to make one giant experience for the player as they go and they explore and they discover, right? So, because it already exists, it's already there, you can really make some cool stuff with it, and you can feel like Indiana fucking Jones while you do it, so why wouldn't you, you know? How about slowly getting pieces of a map that would unlock a final dungeon? Roland, great idea. Every single one of these expeditions you go on gives you a piece of a map. And if you have enough time, you could maybe have multiple maps. And those maps, say, for example, you do 5 or 6 of these. Now you have, 5 or 6 different pieces of 3 different maps. You unlock all of those maps by doing all of the dungeons. They lead to even deeper things and even deeper things. And before you know it, let's say 24 dungeons in, you finally have a unified key, that unlocks a thing. And now you go out and you search for the location of the thing. And you have to read the inscription of the thing, because the inscription tells you about a people that existed somewhere, and this thing used to be in their possession. So now you go and you look on your map and you go, oh, it must be these people. I think they're sort of what this thing describes. You go there and you talk to the people there, and one of the people there says, oh, yes, I remember that. My grandfather told me about this thing. So you're talking to people, you're discovering things, you're traveling the world, and then finally you get to the big thing that you're unlocking. And this is a mega dungeon, solo dungeon, that you go through with your profession, defeating maybe a couple of bosses along the way. It's all solo. And right at the end of it, there's a mount, right? So right at the end, there's a mount. The reason that isn't necessarily reward-based gameplay is the amount of work that you have to do in order to actually unlock this mount is so incredibly overpowering that most people will just go, nah, it's fine. I'm not going to do that. sort of like when you look at the arena mounts, right? Most people don't try to unlock the arena mounts. Why? Because, well, at that point, the amount of work that you would need to do in order to unlock that mount is just too much for you to actually just do it for the reward. So you just don't do it. The same with mythic mounts. Most people don't unlock mythic mounts because the amount of work is just too much. That's the only way you can do rewards in it, is it has to be so difficult that the reward isn't enough incentivization for players to engage with it. Well, I do want mounts to be harder to get in World of Warcraft in general. I think there are far too many mounts in World of Warcraft. Maybe I'm wrong on this. Maybe you guys don't agree at all. And I would actually like to know from you. The problem that I have with mounts is there used to be a time where you would actually get super excited when you get a mount. I don't feel like that is the case anymore, and I don't feel like that's been the case for a long time. Now, whenever you do get a mount, you almost have this experience of fucking finally. Rather than, oh wow, I just got this mount, this is really cool. It's more a case of, man, damn it, I no longer have to do this shit anymore. I feel like there's too many mounts in the game, and it makes the mounts just feel less impactful. Now, that doesn't hold it as true for the new dragon riding mounts, because you actually get to customize them yourself, so that makes them actually really cool. So I'm specifically talking about just the sheer collectible mounts that you have in World of Warcraft. Now it's just another number to the collection. Chris, yeah, that's pretty much how I feel about it, making them more valuable and also part of the player expression. Well, what I suggested, and I would love to hear your thoughts on this, I suggested, how about you continue to have the mounts the way that you've always had them in World of Warcraft, but how about every expansion, there is one mount. This mount has a super low drop chance, and the work you have to do for it is kind of insane. But it is a phenomenal fucking mount. We're talking cash shop level of animations. Like, when you are on this mount, people will know that you did the work for it, right? So we call these mounts special mounts or epic mounts or whatever you want to call them. But these are the very important mounts in the game. They are only available for a short, not for a short period of time, but they're only really available to those people that really fucking want them. Because I feel like that would at least bring back this special nature of mounts. Because there's very few of these mounts out in the world. It's not like you have 800 of them. In about 10 expansions from now, you'll have 10. There will be 10 of these mounts in the world. And so you have different tiers of mounts. And the higher tier ones are the ones that people get excited for. The lower tier ones are just whatever. Felt nicely implemented to me. I don't like it. You don't have to like it. It's my idea. Legendary mount. Well, yeah, like a legendary mount, an epic mount, whatever you want to call it. But it's a mount that requires you to actually work on it, right? You actually have to put in the effort. And when you finally get it, it feels good. It feels good. It doesn't, I don't know exactly how you would implement it, but it has to be that feeling of, oh, wow, I just got this mount. This is the coolest shit ever. Right? And again, it can't be something that just continues to happen, because then people are going to get bored. And again, people are just going to be like, who gives a shit? It's just another mount, right? Holy, the mythic mounts don't do shit. Because they're not actually that rare. You just wait 2 expansions, then you go get it. And again, there's just so many of them, they don't mean shit. I don't know of many people that give 2 craps about the mythic mounts outside of the fact that number goes higher. Every once in a while, you might get a mythic raid where the mount actually looks really cool and people want it. But for the most part, it is just a case of, well, number goes higher. Let's get that one. So, to be... I wonder if I should get into this. Because I don't really... Okay, so this isn't meant to be negative at all. What I'm about to share with you guys aren't meant to be negative. But it is an explanation. Because many of you might be sitting here listening to me describe and define midcore and thinking, but Aquilon, this seems very, very obvious. Like, how are you telling me that Blizzard didn't know that there's an entire player base called midcore players that engaged with the game in a very specific way? And if you thought that, you would be correct, but I do think it's prudent for me to at least explain why it's so easy for companies like Blizzard to miss things like this. So there was this insane thread on Twitter. Now, you can go over to my Twitter and you can read this thread. If you read one thread, this would be it. This is one of the greatest threads in gaming ever. It's pretty long, but if you care about this kind of stuff, this is such a fun read. So Very AFK he's one of the big dicks over at Larian Studios. He's one of the marketing guys for Larian Studios. And so the guys are behind Baldur's Gate 3, right? And he basically goes on this, let's call it a rant, although it isn't really a rant, about how bad marketing agencies are for video games. How bad these companies are, because these companies do not understand the relationship between company and player. You see, the problem that we have in gaming, and this is a problem that's really become a problem in the last few years, the player went from being a player to a consumer. And a game went from being a game to a product. And there's a reason why we became consumers and games became products. Marketing. You see, marketing agencies don't know what to do with terms like players and games. What does it mean? In their minds, well, a player is just a consumer and a game is just a product. But that's not actually the relationship between players and games. You see, unlike, for example, Kellogg's Cornflakes, I couldn't give two shits who's the CEO of Kellogg's. I couldn't give two craps what Kellogg's does as a company because, well, I just need my cereal in the morning, right? I really couldn't care less about most of any of this. Like, most of you eat food and you don't even know the company that makes your food. As long as it's food and it tastes good, who gives a shit? That's never been true for video games. When you play a seriously good game, you go follow the developers over on Twitter because you want to know what they're going to be doing next. When you hear about a really cool game, you actually track that really cool game. You become a part of it, right? You become part of that community. There's no Kellogg's Cornflakes fucking community. If Kellogg's Cornflakes announced tomorrow that they're doing a giant convention for all Kellogg's Cornflakes enjoyers, would you go? No. Why the fuck would you go? You just do it in the mornings. It's your breakfast. You're not going to go to the convention. Who gives a shit, right? As long as it's in my bowl and it, snap, crackle, and pops, or whatever the fuck the slogan is for Kellogg's Cornflakes. I think that's Rice Krispies, snap, crackle, and pop. I don't know. I haven't eaten cereal since I was like 10. But you get the idea, right? Gaming, on the other hand, very different. We are intimately involved with the companies that make our video games. And there's a level of trust that needs to exist between the player and the company that makes the video games that doesn't really exist anywhere else. We don't really have that level of trust between, the consumer and any other product on the markets. There's basically like a baseline trust. I just need to trust that Kellogg's won't dump poison into their cornflakes and then I'll consume it. Although they probably do dump some kind of poison in there, but, that's besides the point now. You see, the big problem that Very AFK points out in this thread is data. AAA studios, and specifically very large AAA studios, have become obsessed with data. The problem with data is that almost all of the data analysis that we have these days is in the form of traditional marketing, and very specifically, traditional company marketing. So when we collect data, we look at it through the lens of traditional marketing, traditional companies, and how traditional companies operate. But when gaming companies aren't traditional companies, and players and companies have a very different relationship between one another, then suddenly your data can be incredibly skewed as a result of that. Because data means nothing if the interpretation and analytics of that data is flawed. Because data alone teaches you nothing. You have to analyze the data, and you have to understand how you analyze the data. Now, companies like Blizzard and pretty much every single AAA studio rely on something called market research, which is basically companies that go out, research the market to collect data, and then bring this data back to the companies to make their games. Since these companies operate on the assumption that gaming companies are like traditional companies, the data that these companies collect are highly, highly, highly flawed. Because the data suggests things in traditional companies that it will not suggest in a gaming company. How do these companies collect their data? How many of you have ever filled out a Blizzard survey or a gaming survey of any kind? And when I say fill out, I mean literally you filled out a bunch of answers and submitted it. How many of you? Because I've been sent one as well, right? And I'll be honest with you, the amount of time I spent on that survey is criminally short. Like, most of the things I literally just skipped through. And I would assume it's probably true for most of you. Most of it you just skip through because it gets long and you have other things that you want to do and you don't really give too much of a shit about this. But you want to fill it out because why not? You know, it's something to do, you know? Sometimes people just do it for morbid curiosity. You just want to know what all the questions are on the survey. You couldn't even really give a shit about the answers as long as you can see all of the questions that is on the survey. And the other problem with surveys is the only time a survey would actually mean something is if the people filling out the survey understands what the survey is for, which most people that fill out surveys don't understand what it's for, and therefore don't fill it out the way that it should be filled out. Insofar as you have to really think about the answer. You have to think about the fact that this survey will determine the future of your game. You have to fill out a survey with that in mind. This is the future of your game. You are informing this company on what you want to see in the future. The other issue is, of course, that people cannot ask for something that they don't know exists. So if a company comes to you and says, what new features would you like to see in World of Warcraft? And they are specifically talking to a player that has never played any other game but World of Warcraft, before you think, Akalon, that's not many people, you would be surprised. There are tons of people that play World of Warcraft as their only MMO. And quite a few people that play World of Warcraft as their only game. So how is a player that has never played any other game going to ask for something in World of Warcraft that they've never even seen? It would be like me asking you to invent a new color. You can't think of a new color because, well, it's impossible to think of a new color. You can only think of a new color in relation to all of the other colors that you know. And you would be limited to all of the other colors that you know. Right? And that's where you are. So the data that these companies get are flawed to start off with. Because the people that should be filling out these surveys aren't really filling them out. And the ones that do fill them out, even though they should be the ones to fill them out, don't have the time to really put in the effort to answer correctly, or necessarily even have the necessary skill to answer the questions in the way that it should be answered. And I include myself in that. I don't even think I have the skill to answer those surveys in the way that they should be answered. You see, because video games aren't supposed to be made with data. They're supposed to be made from the perspective of, this is what I want to play. I'm going to make a game that I want to play. And then hopefully other people would want to play it as well. That's where you get to the point where Blizzard doesn't know that there is an entire community of midcore players that have nothing to do in WoW. You see, because they're developing and designing the game based on data rather than based on this is what I would like to play. But it does seem like that is changing, by the way. So that's why I said this isn't being negative. This is just me trying to give an explanation for why this is what's happening. But it does feel like that is almost definitely starting to change in WoW. It looks like the developers have a lot more fun now in the interviews. They look to be a lot more hyped for the content. For the content that they're designing. So all things considered, these developers look a lot happier now with the game and with the things that they're developing. So maybe they are starting to develop games that they want to play themselves, and they're hopeful that the player would want to play these things as well, which is how it should be, I think. Asking what other games players play or media they consume might give insight in what players want. Bahamut, again, the problem with that would just be time, right? And in my personal opinion, of all the surveys that you send out, the overwhelming majority of them will not be filled in. And also, you do get a bunch of people that will literally just want to see what all the questions are. So they don't give a shit about what they tick. So they just click through, right? Just so they can go next, click through, go next, just so they can see all the questions. So they can sort of guess as to what the next game for WoW might be. So I think surveys are just inherently flawed. They don't work. Also consider this gaming truth. Players are surgically accurate at pointing out problems. Players are also terrible at suggesting solutions. Oh, anti-product, absolutely. Absolutely. Players can very easily tell you what is wrong with your game. But it is true that asking a player to fix that problem is a waste of time. The player has no idea necessarily how to fix it. Sometimes they do, but most of the time they don't. They can tell you, though, they don't like it. And that's really what you should be taking away from it. Oh, yeah. But Holly does play the game. This is actually the next thing we're going to be talking about, because this might actually get a lot of you very excited. Okay, chat. Question time. And I will continue to read your feedback, by the way, on our last topic, and I will respond to that. You guys know how it works. I like to introduce a new topic and then sort of, jump a bit back and forth as we get into the new topic. How many of you feel like race identity in World of Warcraft is lacking? How many of you feel like you no longer feel like an orc or a night elf when you level? It kind of feels a little bit more muted now with the island that you start on and then, going. How many of you feel like there's just not enough things making me feel like an orc, or making me feel like a troll, or making me feel like a night elf or a human? I struggle with finding identity within the game. Race and faction identity is lacking, 100% lacking. Everything feels like it's the same. Yeah, I don't feel like a Worgen at all when I play. All right, it has been a noticeable step back since Legion. True, but I feel more like class identity is lacking. Class identity is definitely a conversation that needs to be had. But for now, I'm going to focus on the one thing that Holly spoke about. Good news for those of you that do feel like those things are lacking. Blizzard knows. They're well aware of it. Holly herself used this example, saying that she no longer feels like a night elf when she levels a night elf, because of just everything being broken. You no longer have that experience of going through Tildrassil, that early leveling experience, being introduced to the greater world as a night elf, dealing with night elf problems while you're leveling. All of those things have gone the way of the dodo bird. Now, and this is, I don't know if this was planned by Blizzard, or if maybe Blizzard themselves just didn't really think that it was important. But what ended up happening was Blizzard almost started to focus a lot more on, when you level your character, you must feel like you're part of the Alliance or the Horde, rather than feel like you're part of your race. And what ended up happening as a result of this, you ended up feeling like actually nothing. Not really very much part of the faction that you're playing in, but also none of the feeling of being part of the race that you're playing with. And And I think the reason for that is the old WoW did a super good job. Like if we go back to Classic, in Classic, you would start off as an orc and you would deal basically just with orc problems for like the first 10 plus levels of leveling. And then you would be sent all across the world dealing with orc problems because you're an orc, right? And you're dealing with orc problems. And it wouldn't be until you really started to feel like an orc that you would actually for the first time start to realize that actually the orcs, of which I'm a part of, are part of the horde. And as the horde, we are strong and we fight the alliance. So my identity is orc first, horde second, fuck the alliance, right? That's my identity. But when Blizzard removed the race identity from the game, it's as if the faction identity failed to take the place of the race identity. Like the faction identity didn't become more important. It disappeared. So it seems like Blizzard is aware of this, and that's one of the things I didn't cover in my video about that interview. But Blizzard is actively looking now at a complete overhaul, not just of the leveling experience, which is coming, by the way, but of the class or race-based leveling experience to ensure that when you roll your Night Elf, you are going to feel like a Night Elf. Your experience will be distinct from that of a human, from that of a gnome, from that of a dwarf, because you are a Night Elf and you'll start off as a Night Elf. And only then will the world open up for you as you go through it. And I think that is something that's seriously important in World of Warcraft. Damn Blizzard liberals removing Orca perhaps from the game. Sorry, race identity stopped when all important capital functions were centered at one city. Corino, probably to some extent true, although I would argue that that alone isn't what destroyed race identity. Like, it's very easy to just point at one thing and go, yeah, this is why it's destroyed. Those things oftentimes require a bunch of things to go wrong before they get completely destroyed. So I would say it's pretty lazy thinking to think, yeah, if they just make all of the capital cities important again, race identity will come back. I guarantee you that won't happen. Because you'll still be stuck not leveling as a Night Elf until Rasil with a Night Elf story. You'll still be stuck going through the island and then immediately jumping into BFA, right? So those things aren't going to get fixed just because you now allow all of the capitals to have things like portals and stuff like that. Although I do agree with you, I do think Blizzard should embrace the fact that there are far more capital cities on Azeroth and that each of the capital cities should be identical in terms of the amenities that it offers. So I do agree with you. I think every single capital city must have portals. Every single capital city must have a bank, must have an auction house, must have meeting places, because I do think it's pertinent that players have the ability to choose whichever capital city is most fun for them to play in. So yeah, on that sense, I do agree, but I don't think that alone would fix the problems. The further we got away from the original leveling zones of our race, the further away from the meaning we got. True. Then you go from BFA into Shadowlands with Covenants, and you don't get any race identity there either. Dan, true again. And it's going to be true for Dragonflight as well. In Dragonflight, there's very little focus on the race that you're playing. So even now with Dragonflight, that's not going to get better. Kimmy, yeah, true. Right, it will tell Blizzard which one of the capital cities are more fun for players to be in, which one of the capital cities is just better as a capital city. So yeah, absolutely. And this would then maybe give Blizzard the opportunity to look at what those capital cities have and how they differ and what they can make changes to capital cities to make the capital cities be a bit more balanced, in terms of what people want. Other thing is stat weights for different races. No mage hasn't the most intellect anymore. Corino, so I don't believe that you need to bring that back in order to increase race identity. Because if you brought back stat increases for different races, all that would do is it would make more people play certain types of races. It wouldn't make someone feel like a gnome. It would just mean that anyone who uses intellect will automatically roll a gnome, right? But it doesn't mean that they'll feel more like a gnome. They'll just be rolling that because what else are they supposed to roll? This is the base class arguably for that. In fact, I would be far more interested in seeing racial bonuses completely disappear from the competitive side of the game and become completely RP elements to the game. Because I don't think racial bonuses matter all that much. The problem is it matters in the minds of players. Even though it's shown over and over again that the difference between the best race and the worst race is about 1%. For players, 1% is everything, right? League player, how you doing, bro? Like, we had Class Quest and Legion, would be awesome. I do think that once Blizzard fixes the race identity issue, it is of absolute importance that Blizzard goes in and fixes the class fantasy in World of Warcraft. I fundamentally agree with all of you guys. I think class fantasy is something that it felt like it was really getting good in Legion. Like, it felt in Legion as if Blizzard was starting to take class identity super serious, and then they seemingly just gave up. Even though I think it was hugely successful in Legion. You know, you had class order rolls, and class order rolls were seriously cool. You had the artifact weapon. That was also really cool, and I think that should have remained as a system, not necessarily as a power system, but as a system where you could continue to get new appearances and stuff for that weapon. But it seems like Blizzard they just decided, nah, we're gonna stop doing that. But I do think one thing at a time. Let's first fix race identity, then fix faction identity, and then we can look at class identity as a very important thing to get fixed. It's all about the weapon Legion expansion. Chris, I think the weapon played a massive part, but I think the class order rolls also had a lot to do with just the overall happiness of people when it came to class identity. In general, is something lacking. Thomas, I agree with you. I think if there's one word you could use to describe something missing from WoW, it would probably be identity. It doesn't feel like It no longer feels like you are an actual living being in World of Warcraft, like in Azeroth. It feels far more as if Azeroth just serves as sort of like a blank slate for activities for you to engage in. And that's all part of identity, right? People need to feel like they identify with something in order to feel like they're part of something. If they don't have that, then it becomes basically just a menu clicker at that point. I'm not really in Azeroth. I'm not really part of Azeroth. I'm just here to do dungeons, bro. You know, kind of thing. Someone else can terminate the theme. Class identity was so good in Legion. True. It's bland. True. WoW doesn't care about tapers at all. Matthew, what do you mean tapers? Dan, there's a lot of people that choose races exactly the same reason you do. You sucking is we don't need niche spells in open world. Holly, I don't know what to do with open world. I do think open world is pretty much always going to be a major problem in almost all MMOs, but WoW specifically, because you have to make it so that everyone can do it. And this automatically means that you have to cater to the lowest denominator. If you made it too hard, so the people actually needed all of their spells, then automatically, you know, there's a bunch of people that can't do it. Now, if you were to talk about things like, for example, Eye of Kilrog, I do believe that Blizzard should do more with class-specific abilities that aren't necessarily damage abilities, but are very much part of its utility. So, like, for example, a Warlock, Eye of Kilrog. Having the Warlock use Eye of Kilrog in quests to make them feel like a Warlock would probably be a great idea. Having Hunters or Shamans use their Farsight or Eagle Sight, or whatever the fuck Hunter's version is, a Farsight, might also be a good idea to make them feel like they are, in fact, this unique class that has very unique things that it and only it can do. Yeah, Holy, I could agree with that. A great example too. Oh yeah. Yeah, the new earthen eating thing is actually super cool. Yeah, Eagle Eye the Grey, that's the one. The new earthen thing is actually really, really cool. I agree with you. I seriously believe that races, classes, and even factions should definitely be tied to parses. If not parses, will keep being the dominating factor, and identity will be in a second plane. Thomas, wait, when you say be tied to parses, what do you mean? Oh, our peers. Matthew, I wouldn't say Blizzard doesn't. Let me just reacquaint myself with what you said. WoW doesn't care about our peers at all. I wouldn't say that Blizzard doesn't. I would say that Blizzard have historically not given a shit about our peers. That I fundamentally agree with you with. And even though I am probably one of the most hated men in the RP community, which I'm perfectly fine with, because a lot of the people that hate me are weird as fuck, I do want for them the best possible gameplay experience, because I think RP players form part of the heart and soul of any video game, because they're usually the most loyal players that a game has, because even in times of drought, they'll find reasons to play the game, which is obviously pretty good for any game. But you look at things like the new rings that Blizzard have just announced that's coming, the sort of wedding rings kind of thing. I think that's a really cool move for the RPers. The thing that scares me a little about those... Let me ask you, do you guys know about the rings? Do you guys know what I'm talking about with the rings? Do you guys don't know about the rings? Okay. So there's a new ring that you can make in World of Warcraft. I don't know if it's collected or made by professions, but it's a wedding ring. All right? The ring, you can make one for yourself, then make one for someone else, and then you two can attune to each other with this ring, and you become married in World of Warcraft. Once you are married in World of Warcraft, while you're in combat, you have the opportunity to empower their sockets. So all of their sockets actually, I think, gain extra stats on top of the stat that it already gives, and vice versa. So they can do it to you as well. If no one in your group has your ring, so you have that ring, but no one else has the ring, it will just randomly give that upgrade to players around you as it goes. So I guess Blizzard is kind of trying to at least make it not too mandatory. Now, before I even get going on my criticisms of this, what is your initial thought on this type of ring? How do you feel about this? This type of mechanic being added? You can marry someone in FF14, that's true. It's about time. I'll use 2 words to explain to you why I hate this, but then I'll also explain to you why I love it. The 2 words why I hate this is power infusion. And if anyone knows about the absolute horror of power infusion, you will immediately understand what I'm talking about. The reason I love this, and why I would love this, is if Blizzard could remove the power component from it, and instead make it so that you can freely teleport to the person that holds your other ring, right? Or maybe in the open world, you can do some random shit with the person. So maybe if someone has the ring, all mounts become 2 people mounts, right? So if you two have a ring and you're married, every single mount in the game is a 2-person mount. Every single mount that you own is a 2-person mount, right? So great. That's super fun. It's something for the RP crowd to really get excited about, because now they can actually get married and have real rings that they can give to each other. It's a nice RP thing. It's a nice thing to exist in the game. The problem that I have with the rings as they exist right now, or at least as Blizzard have announced them, for those of you that don't know what Power Infusion is, Power Infusion was a buff that could be given, I believe it was by priests, and this would dramatically increase the DPS of the person getting Power Infusion. The issue is that it led to some incredibly toxic gameplay designs and people playing the game incredibly toxically, because certain classes would demand the Power Infusion and then other classes would feel completely left out because their class isn't as powerful on Power Infusion as the other class is. So now you have certain classes that are doing ridiculous amounts of DPS because they're getting all of the Power Infusions. You also have the problem of the priests not necessarily wanting to do the Power Infusion because they didn't really get much from it. So it just created this awkward shit for players that no one really enjoyed it except for the people that constantly got Power Infusion, right? Everyone else hated this system. And the rings is going to be even worse because you're going to join your raiding guild and you're going to be forced to marry someone, right? Like, you're going to be forced. They're going to be like, you get that ring, and you two link up. You get this ring, and you two link up. And then it's almost definitely going to turn into a bit of a mess where some classes will, say, for example, have a higher opportunity of proccing it than other classes. So now there's going to be all manner of combos. So, for example, say you're an Affliction Warlock and the ring has a much higher chance to proc off of dots than what it does off of direct damage. They're going to be like, bro, you have to marry the Fire Mage because you're going to proc the Fire Mage and the Fire Mage is going to do big boom boom damage when you constantly give the Fire Mage all of these increased stats. But you sit there with your dick in your hand because the Fire Mage is never giving you stats. And you're like, bro, what the hell is this? Or maybe the Frost Mage, because fire does have a dot, right? So you never get any increased stats, but the Frost Mage is buzzing because they have like 500 extra haste all fight long. You know, so I feel like the second you add power to things that could work so well for the RP community, it almost invites drama, you know, and I really don't want to see that drama coming to the next expansion, because you can know that if my worst fears, I might be completely wrong and it ends up knowing no one even gives a shit about it, right? But if my worst fears are realized, what do you think the literal month after the expansion goes live, what does the forums look like? Everyone fucking complaining about the rings. What does every single YouTube video look like? Everyone complaining about the fucking rings. The rings will be the #1 complaint in the game, right? And you could avoid that by just removing the power element. So I personally would see the power element removed and instead make it an RP friendly item and maybe like an ease of use item. So if you have a very close friend and you guys love playing games together, make it so that they have the ring, you have the ring, you link up, you're married now, and you can teleport to each other at will, no matter where you are in the world. You can use the same mounts. Just, you know, have fun, because why not? May I still do the thing? Let sweaty raid leaders be sweaty. Anti-product. So I hate when people say, let the sweaty raid leaders be sweaty. Because it's one of the most misinformed, and I don't mean to attack you here, but it's honestly one of the most misinformed takes a player can have in World of Warcraft. Is when someone say, well, that shit doesn't matter to most players. It's only for the top 1%. And then you find out that it doesn't actually matter to the top 1% at all. The people that follow the meta more closely than anyone else are the casual fuckers. It's you that want to pug, and then your pug leader is telling you, if you don't get that ring, you're not coming. So now you're a super casual player that just want to play the game, but you have to go make a fucking ring just so that you can get into dungeons. because the guy that's organizing the dungeon or the raid pretends to be, you know, he cosplays as a fucking mythic raider on the weekends. And you're like, bro, I just want to do normal. Like, this is just a normal dungeon. Why must we be hyper specialized here? And this guy is cosplaying as a method raider, right? So fundamentally, you're not getting dungeons. The problem is that it always trickles through, and the people that suffer most are the casual audience, or the semi-hardcore audience, really. They're the ones that struggle the most with meta designs, because they don't want to do meta, but they're forced to do meta because the hardcore does meta. Haven't seen the rings either. They're on MMO, on Wowhead. I tweeted about them as well. I think you can find them on my Twitter. You're only forced because you allow it? Okay, again, by your definition, even if you want to raid and all of the raid leaders that's forming pugs demand that you do a bunch of meta stuff, but you do want to raid, you're only being forced because you allow them to force you, because you could just not raid and then you won't be forced. That's literally that's your argument, in other words, anti-product. You just don't have to raid, bro, and then you won't be forced. Yeah, but I do actually want to raid. Yeah, but bro, you just have to, like, not raid then, bro. Because otherwise you're going to be forced and it's all your fault. Well, what if, this is a radical idea, but what if the game didn't have things that made it possible for people to force me to play the game in a way that I don't want to play it? Or at least, what if the game didn't have more things? Because there's always going to be talents and meta talents and cookie cutter talents, right? That's always going to exist. You're not going to be able to remove those. But at least don't give more things that they can force me with. I want to start my own raid. Anti-product, great. That's great for you. You cannot expect everyone else to do what you do. If you want to start your own raids because you don't want to be forced, but you still want to raid, good for you. There are people that don't want to do that. They don't feel safe enough to run their own raids. They don't think they know enough to run their own raids, but they still want to raid. But they also don't want to be forced to buy a ring and then marry someone just so that they can get a raid. Who came up with this idea? I don't know who came up with it. It's just, I mean, right now this is alpha, right? Don't flame Blizzard for trying new things in alpha. Now is the time for us to give the feedback on the things that Blizzard is announcing, so that they can fix it before it goes live. I applaud them for actually trying. I think this is a really cool idea, and I think it can be a really good thing in WoW. With enough feedback and with enough changes, I think it can be really fun. I think it's a bigger problem with guilds than pugs. I have pugged everything the last 2 expansions, and no one declined me because I didn't have an easy to get best item. But in guilds, they make it a biggie. Dennis, okay, so here's my problem. You are not indicative of the overall player base. You are one person that may have been lucky enough not to experience that. So your experience in World of Warcraft, this is going to sound crude and it's really not meant as such, but your experience in World of Warcraft, my experience in World of Warcraft really is worthless. It doesn't mean shit to me. What I focus on when I form opinions is what a lot of people tell me. So when I have a ton of people in comments and in DMs and in conversations and in Discord complaining because they're getting rejected from raid groups in pugs because they really want to play, but they don't have the right talents or they don't have the right gear, I'm going to believe 20 people telling me that this is happening to them over one person saying, well, it never happens to me. It has never happened to me. Great, bro. So are those other 20 people lying? Or are you just not having the same experience as them? Because one person doesn't make a rule. You may be the exception to that rule. And if that is the case, I'm fucking happy for you. But I can tell you there's more than enough people that struggle to get into pug groups because they don't have the right gear, or they don't have the right enchantments, or they don't have this, or they don't have that. There's a lot of people that struggle with that shit. Jake's talents when inviting people. You'd be surprised, Holy. Again, stop thinking about yourself as being the center of attention, people. This might be strange, but you are not the main character. I know this comes as a shock to a lot of people who thought that they were truly the main character of this story, but you really aren't. There are other people that experience things that you maybe don't even know about, or that you have never experienced. And just because it's not happening to you does not mean that it's not happening. I am in a fortunate position that I see the conversations that people are having because they're having it in my Discord, they're having it in my comment section, they're having it in my DMs. So I get to see what a lot of people think. And even I can't say that what people in my community are saying is what everyone is feeling, because obviously that's not true. I don't have the whole WoW community as my community, even though I would like that, but I don't, right? So I can only tell you that there are enough people in my community that complain about it, that it does seem to be a problem. So when one or two people tell me, oh, but this isn't a problem at all, say, I'm not going to believe you. I need to see the majority of people say that this isn't a problem, because right now the majority seems to say that it is a problem. Overall, though, boys, how are we feeling about the War Within thus far? What is something that you guys feel truly excite you about the War Within? Like the story, warbands? I switched groups because I wasn't pulling to their speed. Kraken, yeah, there's a lot of stories like that. Solo queue RPG is all I needed. I'm excited for the story aspect and farming T-Mark. Warband story. I'm mostly positive due to Blizzard approach to listening and acting on feedback. Bahamut, I get that. Warbands, all right. So warbands, solo queue. I think the solo queue dungeon, or the solo queue battlegrounds, rated battlegrounds specifically, I don't think enough people are making enough of a deal of it, to be honest with you. I feel like a lot of people are sleeping on this. When, in my opinion, this might be one of the greatest additions to World of Warcraft from a PvP perspective in the last 10 plus years. Because finally, it opens up the PvP space for people that want to play hardcore, but don't necessarily want to do arenas and definitely don't want to get their own RGB groups together. And this means that a lot more people may actually start engaging in it, because one of the key problems in Battlegrounds is you're either not good enough to do Battlegrounds and you basically just get shot on and carried, or you're too good and it's kind of boring, because most of the people you're playing against are pretty low B noobs. So yeah, you're smurfing and you're killing 20, 30, 40 people, but it's not really challenging. Whereas solo queue RGBs makes it so that it is challenging, right? And you can get that challenge, and what's more, as you get better, the challenge scales, right? So it's basically, I view this as the same thing as League of Legends ranked. So for those of you that don't know, maybe you don't play League of Legends, there are two fundamental ways for you to engage in League of Legends. One is by doing random matches, right? And these have no real MMR. They have no real scaling option. You play against new players, old players, skilled players, pretty much anyone, right? It doesn't matter. It's mostly blind pick as well. I don't know if blind pick still exists, but it used to be blind pick, although they may have removed blind pick from the game. I don't think anyone does blind pick anymore. I haven't done normal in years, so I don't know how it's changed. But I do know that it isn't scaling. It won't provide you with much of a challenge. Even me that don't play that many ranked games in League of Legends, the last time I did a normal, I killed the opposite mid laner, I think 6 times before the 10-minute mark. And I was playing Ziggs. I'm not supposed to kill you 6 times on Ziggs. What the hell are you doing even at that point, right? So blind pick or normal, not a great experience if you want the challenge. Ranked, on the other hand, brilliant experience if you want the challenge. Because the better you get, the better the people you play against get. And that is the most important thing. And that is what RGB, solo RGBs are going to provide. The better you get, the better the people you play against get. The more the challenge increases. And the more fun it gets, because part of PvP is that challenge, no? So I think that is going to be one of the bigger additions to it's one of those underrated additions that players are eventually just going to look back on and say this may have been one of the greatest changes for PvP ever. And more importantly, this now incentivizes Blizzard to start spending a lot more time designing battlegrounds, because you are going to have a very, very lively battleground scene, where previously battlegrounds was basically just a leveling, sort of a level, a gearing incursion, right? You go do that, you get a bit of gear, and then you get into the arenas. Or for a lot of players, you do that, get the gear, and then fuck off. Now there's like an actual reason why you're going to be doing battlegrounds. This is the expansion I've watched the most lore speculation on by far. Dan, I do think it's going to get even better. I think the lore is about to level up like crazy. And by the way, guys, if you are watching and you are enjoying, could you please hit that like button? It would help out a ton. If you disliked it, just hit the dislike button. That still helps. So yeah, you know, it would be appreciated if you wouldn't mind. Adona mode, Battleground Arena in WoW would be fun. They spoke about that years ago. Years ago, there was rumors of an actual battleground that was going to be like Dota, like League of Legends, and that just never happened. I don't know why it never happened, but it never happened. So yeah, it sort of is what it is, but it would be super cool. I'm watching you, so I like it. Therefore, a like is in order. Aston, I appreciate that. Ortangu, I appreciate that. Roland, I appreciate you. Thank you so much, guys. I think what I'm most excited about is the fact that they have a roadmap for the next 3 expansions, and they know that they have to build up some payoffs. Joshua, I am firmly in agreement with you there. The only thing I am a little bit afraid of, maybe, is... Well, I'm not really afraid of it. It's not afraid. Afraid is the wrong word. It's more... I'm curious to see if Blizzard will be willing to take even more chances. You know, now that they have that roadmap and they know exactly where the story is going to go, are they going to be more invested in taking big risks, knowing how the story is going to play out? Or are they still going to play it relatively safe? Because I am hoping risks. I'm hoping that this is going to be an expansion or a saga filled with risks, where Blizzard just goes balls to the wall, throws everything at the wall, see what sticks, pull forward what sticks, and leave everything else out, right? Did you see the Tully interview with Maria Hamilton? I did not, Elodie. I don't watch Taliesin's videos, so I have not, no. She said she's gonna go crazy. She said that in the Windows Central interview as well, so I believe that. Well, to be honest, yeah, I agree with that. I think that's happening. What Josh has said is a big rain for my excitement. Having a war span a single expansion was disappointing. Spanning a story over multiple expansions sounds amazing. The thing that you hit the nail on the head there. What has been one of my key criticisms of Shadowlands? What was my key criticism of Shadowlands? For those of you that's been watching for a long time. What was the one thing that I complained about in Shadowlands over and over and over again, to the point where people were telling me I'm just being toxic? 1x back arcs was one of them. But the biggest one was you have this villain that you want me to believe is the most important villain that we have ever faced. And yet I could give two shits about this villain. I legitimately could not care less about this villain. I don't know them. I don't give a fuck about them. Who are they? Why do they never wear a shirt? That's literally the only questions I have about this character. And the few times that I did see this character, I was not convinced that this was really a bad guy or a good guy, because again, I had no information about this. This character didn't exist. Now, I have used this example in the past, but I'll do it again and you guys be the judge. Imagine this alternative version, if you will, of Shadowlands. So imagine Shadowlands launches tomorrow. The expansion takes us back to Northrend. But this is a new Northrend. It's far more dangerous. We thought that it was the Scourge that was rising up, but it wasn't the Scourge. There's a new threat. The beings are far more powerful and far more evil and far more dangerous. As we make our way through Northrend, fighting to establish a base camp in Borean Tundra, we finally make our way through and we get to Icecrown Citadel. And when we arrive at Icecrown Citadel, we find that ICC, the place that we had previously cleansed, are now infested with brand new monsters. But we don't know who these monsters are. Where did they come from? How the hell did they arrive on Azeroth? Why do they look so strange and awkward? We have no idea. It is in this final patch of this new expansion that we learn that there is a veil that separates us from the realms of death. And death has found a way into our reality and is trying to destroy us so that it can take control of Azeroth. We chase Sylvanas all the way through ICC. Every fight, there's a new challenge to overcome. And when we finally get to the top of Icecrown Citadel, we see Sylvanas face off against Bolvar. She kicks Bolvar right in the penis, and then she rips open the sky after basically killing us or defeating us. She didn't kill us, but she defeats us. She rips open the sky and bam, shit, here we go. This is death. Throughout this expansion, we learnt a name, a single name. The name is Zuval. All of these creatures serve this single thing, Zuval. What is it? What does it do? Then we get to the Shadowlands and we learn that the Shadowlands itself is screwed. Every single one of these zones is corrupted beyond belief. The Bastion and the Kyrians are basically mind enslaving people that die and using their anima in order to fuel their war machines, right? We get to the Necro Lords and they use the anima to launch expeditions and attacks on all of the other cosmological forces and then steal their anima for themselves. Revendreth is working at siphoning those that they deem unworthy of all of their anima and then killing them forever. These zones are wrecked and screwed. And at the head of this entire screw-up sits Zuval, surrounded by his brothers and sisters. And we have the Winter Queen, who used to be part of them, who is the only one who does not serve. We maybe find her in Ardenweald locked away inside the other side, where somebody is keeping her prisoner, or not, Muazala is keeping her prisoner. We finally get her out, and she explains to us just what has happened here, and how Zuval has basically corrupted the entire Shadowlands and what it was meant to be. And then we go into, finally, we have the expansion that takes us into the Maw and into the in-between, where we get the Maw, we get Korthia, each is its own expansion, and each is its own patch, and at the end of that, we raid Torghast. And at the top of Torghast, we take out Zuval. Now you've had 3 expansions where Zuval was introduced and Zuval was explored. By the time we get to the final penultimate expansion, where Zuval is actually the enemy that we have to take down, we already know just about everything about him. We know about how he's pulled the strings behind the scenes on Azeroth. We know about how he's corrupted the whole of the Shadowlands, maybe with the help of someone or something. Argus could probably have been used to great effect in this one. So it's Argus's soul that actually corrupted all of these other Eternal ones, or whatever the case may be, right? But ultimately, how would you feel about that Shadowlands? Do you think that would be a better or the same Shadowlands? How would you experience that Shadowlands? Too little time. Dan, very true. Some things evolve for a longer period of time would make things more convincing as well. Oh yeah, 100%. 100%. Better and show the Primus is the real threat. Yeah, you could even show that the Primus is behind the whole thing because you have the time now for it, right? Shadowlands with a story, of course it would be better. This has build up and development. Yeah, it does. Because that's the one thing that Shadowlands didn't have, right? That's where Shadowlands failed. It provided an enemy that no one cared about because it was trying to do all of that in a single expansion. And you can't do that. We could go even further back to Battle for Azeroth. And I could say, well, what if Battle for Azeroth was 3 expansions long? And what if N'Zoth escaped in the first expansion, and then we spent the next 2 expansions seeing how he is rebuilding the Black Empire, and then finally we stop him right as he is about to complete the Black Empire. Every single expansion that you can think of in World of Warcraft becomes better when it's 3 rather than 1. Even Legion, as good as Legion was, imagine if Legion was 3 expansions. Argus was its own expansion, where we would see the whole of Argus, everything that happened there, all of the old artifacts and worlds and the civilizations that may have existed there. When you have time for a story to unfold, you really have the time to make that story your own. And that is what matters. Holy, the problem is, it is confusing because it needs to be rushed. And it needs to be rushed because we have to tell the whole story inside a single expansion. So, of course, it's going to be confusing, right? This is why I'm so excited for The War Within. Because it doesn't have to be rushed. Story felt so rushed ever since Legion, maybe before even. The reason it's since Legion, Legion's story already started in TVC. We had multiple expansions that dealt with elements of Legion's story. Legion's story was the completion of almost a decade's worth of story. That's why Legion felt so good as a story. Almost nothing in Legion came out of left field. Nothing felt like, wait, what the hell is this? Why is this here? We need more of that, and I think the Saga approach gives us this, right? It gives Blizzard now the proper time to explore and develop a story and also allow things to simmer. Because now Blizzard can actually introduce things already in the first patch of The War Within that we're only even going to see in The Last Titan. Heck, since, and this is going to be super cool, since by the end of The War Within, Blizzard will already start developing the next Saga's first expansion, you could see things in Midnight that you're only going to deal with in the next World Soul Saga. So Blizzard now have just a massive timeline that they can introduce things and then we'll only deal with those things 6 years later. You know? But you have time now. You have the time to really allow the player base to explore the story and for the story to mature. So lost at the end of the first movie. Aston, pretty much. So, Aston, you are absolutely correct. If Avengers was meant to be a single story, the loss of the Avengers in that movie would not have worked. But since they knew that Avengers was going to be 2, number 1 could end in a massive loss because number 2 would bring it back. Right? And they would finally win a number 2. So the more time you have, the more opportunity you have to because stories are very interesting insofar as once you start writing stories, you start to realize that a story kind of writes itself. If you have a good enough idea, the story writes itself. Like, things just start to make super sense. As you're writing the story, you go, oh, but this would absolutely happen. But in order for that to happen, you need time. If you don't have time, then sometimes those natural ebbs and flows of a story need to be cut because you don't have the time to explore it. Because if that happens, this is going to take too long. It's going to be too difficult, right? Aston, I want us to lose. Basically, I would not be against us losing in every single battle in the War Within. Basically, at the end of the War Within, the player must feel like this is completely helpless. At the end of the War Within, the player must get to a point where they feel like, dude, these powers are too strong. There's fuck all that we can do. How is this even possible? You could even do it at the end of Midnight. So right up until the end of Midnight, the player base literally just goes through one loss after another. And when we do experience victories, it's Pyrrhic victories at best. It's like, yeah, you could probably kind of claim that that was somewhat of a fucking victory. It wasn't much, but it was something. You know? And then in The Last Titan is when the player finally, like, we finally turn the tide. But then if it was up to me, that turning the tide would be another really bad thing that we will only realize how bad it really is once we get into the next saga. Aston, very true. If we lose, it will make us realize we're facing an actual threat. We always just kill everything and get Deus Ex Machina into the next patch. I really wish Watt got the time to develop part 2. Oh yeah, same. Watt could have been so good if it had time. Exactly, turning tide only at the end, but with the caveat that leads to the next saga. And since the next sagas, by the end of The Last Titan, the next 2 expansions for the next saga will pretty much already be done. So you know that they've already included the next story into the next saga, because the sagas are now following one another, and the way Blizzard is developing, they're pretty much always developing 2 expansions in advance. Because we know that as we speak currently, Midnight is already deep into development. And if Blizzard is to be believed, the second the War Within launches, they're starting work on The Last Titan. So then The Last Titan is already being developed. And we already know that the artists for WoW, for Blizzard, has already started to create the artwork for The Last Titan, because the artists are already done with Midnight. This was Maria Hamilton said this in an interview. The artists have already started doing the art for The Last Titan because they're done with Midnight. Midnight's artwork is done. Now the developers are just making the game. So clearly Blizzard is on a fucking roll, boys. Like, the content at Blizzard is off the rails. Prepare to lose, maybe just temporarily. Carino, so the way I would do loss in World of Warcraft is build characters. Like, it has to be a mixture of losing important characters, but then also because you now know that you have multiple years of story in advance, you can introduce new players in, for example, the War Within that you're going to kill in The Last Titan. So you introduce this new, very cool character. You make sure that the player base starts to love this character, but you always knew that this character was going to die at in The Last Titan. So you're building characters that will die eventually, and the way you get around players figuring this out is you introduce 4 or 5 new characters every expansion, but only 1 or 2 of them ever die. So the player base never actually knows how the story is going to go. And so what you do is you have a cast of that you call safe characters. So these would be the main heroes of World of Warcraft: Jaina, Anduin, Sylvanas, Nathanos, whoever, right? These are characters that won't ever die. But then you have new characters and heroes that rise up that the player base starts to form an emotional connection with. And those are the characters that you can kill off because it provides that deep emotional fuck. We lost this character and I was loving this character, but it's not like you're killing off your whole cast, right? Because if you had a game that was going to end at some point, you could absolutely kill off every single one of your heroes. But World of Warcraft doesn't want to end. And this means that you can't, like, what happens when all of the heroes in WoW is dead? Like, what happens if every single patch one of the heroes dies? In War Within, there are no heroes left. Everyone's just dead now. You know, so I would argue that that's probably what's going to happen, though that's probably how the story is going to play out. Thrall and Jaina. It could happen. Bahamut, so the way I would have preferred it, Kirirto, how you doing? The way I would have preferred Sylvanas' story would have been Sylvanas not being a villain, but we not understanding how the universe operates. Because Sylvanas has these voice lines where next you see me, you will understand. Which suggests that Sylvanas clearly there was a bigger plot involved. And that plot never got revealed to the player base. Either because the story changed or because Blizzard decided they wanted to do something else. But clearly, Sylvanas wasn't the bad guy. Sylvanas had a very good reason for doing what she did. But even if I accept the way the story is going now, I would have preferred Sylvanas going down as the fuck you all bitch that she has always been. You know? So even after they caught her, Sylvanas just goes, I will do it again. Right? So, because the problem that I have with Sylvanas' redemption arc is it's not even a redemption arc. You know, it's sort of like they pussied out of Sylvanas dealing with the consequences of her actions. And as much as I love Sylvanas and I don't want Sylvanas to be removed from the game, Sylvanas absolutely killed tens of thousands of Night Owls. And in the way Shadowlands played out, there is no forgiveness for what she did. Like, there could have been forgiveness if it turns out Sylvanas was doing that because she wanted to show us how evil the Shadowlands is, and it turns out that the whole Shadowlands is indeed evil, and we spend all of our time killing all of the Eternal Ones because of how evil the Shadowlands is. That could have been Sylvanas going, see, I needed to do this in order to show you what is actually happening here, right? So, the morally gray character, the anti-hero, so to speak. I'm doing things for heroic reasons, but they're not heroic, okay? So that would have been, you know, in that way, Sylvanas could have been redeemed because she's redeemed by the state of the world rather than her own actions. Or you make her face the consequences of what had happened. You kill tens of thousands of Night Elves for no other reason than just being a fucking moron, right? And that's it. You have to die, or you're going to spend all of eternity in the maw. Whatever, right? You could figure out. But the way they went with it is sort of like they tried to almost whitewash all of her sins by making her soul split. And even though we all knew that her soul was split, the way Blizzard implemented that soul split was they were trying to tell the players, well, you can't judge her because it's not her fault. Right? You can't judge her because it wasn't her fault. That is the worst way of doing it. Because the problem is no one bought it. Everyone that hated Sylvanas because of what she did at Teldrassil still hated her after the Soul Split. And everyone that loved Sylvanas after Teldrassil still loved Sylvanas after the Soul Split. So fundamentally, you achieved nothing. You didn't even write a redemption arc. You basically just wrote a story where you tried to gaslight the player base into going, nothing ever bad happened here, so stop trying to make this bad. It was never going to work. It was never going to work. No matter how much time you gave it to cook, that was just never going to be a good idea. Epic Thulu, someone just said it in chat. Elune allowed Sylvanas to kill the Night Elves. Because Elune could have absolutely stopped it. And all Elune did, well, Elune said she did, was she took away their pain. But then we find out that she absolutely did not take away their pain, because if you go stand in the river and you watch all the Night Elf souls coming through the river, they are in agony. They were in absolute pain. All Elune did was she made them fall asleep so that they couldn't scream. They felt the pain, they just couldn't scream. So clearly Elune wanted the Night Elves to die. Elune had a reason for why she wanted the Night Elves to die. Sylvanas killing all of those Night Elves played into what Elune actually wanted to have happen. Alright? So this suggests that Sylvanas wasn't on the side of the bad guys when these things were going down. It's just Blizzard decided for some reason not to tell that story. Right? My firm belief is that Sylvanas was supposed to lead us against Zuval. That was what Sylvanas' plan was. And then Blizzard decided last minute to shift it up, to change it up. And then we got this random story that made very little sense. Jason, I don't think it's that the Newser wasn't smart enough. I think the Newser had a different idea. Remember, that story was written by Alex Afrigiabi. And I think the second Alex Afrigiabi walked away from WoW, the Newser thought, you know what? I don't like this idea. I don't like the way, because I think Alex Afrigiabi was writing the death of Sylvanas. That's what I think. I think if Alex Afrigiabi was in charge of the story, Sylvanas was dying inside the Shadowlands, and maybe we'd get a cutscene of her and Nathanos retiring in the Shadowlands, finally getting the freedom from death that she had so hoped for, that she had so longed for. And I think that was the story. And I think when Denuzer took over, he didn't want that. He wanted Sylvanas to stick around. And so he started to make changes. The problem is at this point, Blizzard had already given up on the fucking expansion. So now you're very limited in what changes you can make, because everyone that's supposed to design the quests for these changes are already working on the next expansion. So you're shut out of luck, basically. Dean, how you doing, bro? I don't know if corporate said that, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was corporate. Sylvanas is a massive selling point in Blizzard. Her artwork and her statues and stuff tend to sell out big. Like, Blizzard makes a shit ton of money off of Sylvanas, so I would genuinely not be surprised if it was some business decision that said you cannot kill off one of the fucking golden cows of Blizzard. What are you doing? So yeah, I would not be surprised by that. Elodie, I think the Folk and Fairy Tale book is absolutely going to play a part in the lore, but it's important to remember, Folk and Fairy Tales is exactly that. It's fairy tales. It's folk tales and fairy tales that the denizens of Azeroth tell. Fairy tales and folk tales are oftentimes moral teachings. They're very rarely based on reality. And those that do have crumbs of reality within them is really just that. It's crumbs of reality, right? So I don't think that any of the folk and fairy tale stories will ever be 100% true, but I think they will all contain kernels of truth. And I think in that way, it will absolutely work. One of the OG characters, Frijabi might have wanted to get rid of Mason's characters and possibly self-insert some. As in, I would not put it past him. The dude always looked very fucking sketch to me. Like, you want to talk about a walking red flag? Alex Frijabi was always that to me. I never liked him because he was, for a long time, Alex Frijabi was this sort of nerdy, awkward, goofy kind of guy. And then when Mason left, Alex Frijabi almost changed his personality. Like, he became Mason, or he at least tried to become Mason. He tried to take over the role of hyping players up and getting players to, you know, like Chris Mason would do for the Horde, for the Alliance kind of stuff. He would do that shit, right? And what bothered me by this is he almost changed his personality entirely, but the one thing Frijabi could never get away from was his arrogance. I remember watching interviews with him live, and I would always tell my viewers, he's arrogant in almost every answer that he gives. He has this air of arrogance as if he's too fucking important for the story, so to speak, and too fucking important for any of this. And I hated that because Mason, on the other hand, was always humble. It's part of why people loved Mason so much. Mason truly looked like he cared about the players and he cared about the story, you know? And in his humility, players found that they could really connect with him. Whereas in Frijabi, there was no humility there. This guy was literally so full of himself. I could never like him. Even before all the shit about him came out, I never liked him. I never trusted him. He was best friends with Mason for 10 plus years. Was not Mason creation in Warcraft 3 though? I'm not sure who created Sylvanas where or when, but just because he didn't create Sylvanas does not mean that it didn't become his baby, right? Oh yeah, we'll definitely see the Nathris again. Absolutely. Maybe Thulu, that's a good way of putting it. Yeah, it became fake as fuck. Frenemies exist. More like animated in Shadow. I don't think... So, the thing is, just because you're friends with someone does not automatically mean that you're not jealous of them, right? And I do think it's perfectly... You can see how WoW developers could become ridiculously jealous of Mason. Just look at the reaction Mason got when he walked out on that stage, man. When is the last time you've seen a reaction like that for a WoW developer? I'll tell you when. The last time Mason opened BlizzCon was the last time you saw that reaction for a WoW developer. Mason is the epitome of a superstar in Blizzard. He is a superstar. Players love that dude. And they love him because he's humble. Because you can tell he loves the world, he loves the game, he loves the story, and he loves the player base. And it just works, right? So it's easy to believe, actually, that a lot of developers might be quite jealous of Mason. Wishing that they could be treated like superstars. Wishing that they could be treated the way that Mason is. I think they will. We will probably see him again. Never seen any evidence they were best friends or even friends. I'm sure they were friends the same way that you're friends with the people that you work with. Right? I don't believe that Mason was probably close friends with a Frijabi. But remember, if you work in the same office as someone for more than a decade, you're probably going to be friendly, right? You may even go for a beer after work sometimes, you know? And yeah, that is definitely going to happen because you've been working together for so long. But it's also important to note that there has never been a single story untoward about Mason. In all of the lawsuits and everything that happened, no one ever spoke about Mason doing anything untoward. Ever. Right? It is very possible to be friends with someone and not know about the darkest elements of their character. Because most people don't advertise the darkest elements of their character, especially if you happen to be someone that walks in the light. Like, dark people will reveal their character traits to other people who join them in the darkness, because you're both in the darkness. But if you are friends with someone, if you are someone that have some things that you feel a little bit guilty about, right? So you maybe do some things that you feel guilty about and you don't want people to know about it. If you have a friend that absolutely walks in the light, that's the last fucking person you want knowing your secrets. So I'm not saying Chris Mason walks in the light, right? I don't know his personal story. But I can say he strikes me as a dude that does very much walk in the light, right? And so you can imagine Mason is the last person a Frisia Hobby would have revealed the darker elements of himself to. Very true, though. You can be a fairly close friend and still not know the truth about their scumbag ways. True. Very fucking true. I know a guy that used to be best friends with a dude that was locked up for child molestation. They were best friends. You want to know how he found out that this guy was a predator? He caught the guy with his own son. That's how he found out. And they were best friends. They were best friends since high school. He never knew. So the guy went to jail, obviously. But, yeah. So there are... My grandfather used to have a saying. It's much better in Afrikaans, but the direct translation is... another man's books... another man's books are sinister. In Afrikaans, it's duister. And duister is actually more darkness, but in this instance, it's sort of like sinister or cloaked. Basically, another man's books are cloaked is probably a better way of saying it. You can never know what really goes on in someone else's life. You can never know the truth about other people because you're not with them 24/7, right? Even if you are working with them for decades and decades and decades, you're not there 100% of the time. And then it's also, you could say, but he should have heard other people talk about this. Well, what if no one ever told him because they thought that him and a Frisia was friends? So they were trying to keep it secret from him because they were afraid he was going to tell a Frisia. So, he didn't know that a Frisia was doing it and no one wanted to tell him. It's like a million different things. All I know is he's never been accused of anything. As far as I know. No one ever accused him of anything. What I would do if I found out one of my friends did a really bad thing? It depends probably. Well, actually, to me, it doesn't depend on the bad thing. Because I think in a lot of cases, sometimes you can't help what you are. Right? So, for example, predators, we don't know exactly what goes wrong with you. We don't know exactly where it all goes wrong, but it obviously goes wrong miserably, right? And you have thoughts that we would not consider normal. So if I were to catch one of my friends ever being, say, for example, a predator, I would probably take pity on them. But then I would convince them to stand justice, You have to stand trial for the things that you had done, Because it is unforgivable. Like, they're, in my opinion, kids are not to be fucked with under any fucking circumstances. They are children. Leave them alone. Let them be kids. If they're older than 18, let them do whatever the fuck, right? I couldn't give two shits. But kids should not be interfered with. Let them lead their lives. Let them make mistakes. Let them screw up as only kids can. And then when they're 18, whatever. At that point, I couldn't care. I couldn't really care less. Watching Aquaman is like a therapy session. I love it. How you doing, bro? Welcome. I'm happy to hear that. I'm very happy to hear that. Britgirl J, how you doing? Late lunch today. Missed the stream. Well, hi anyway. Hey, how was lunch? There's some pretty fucking rude kids sometimes, though. Usually street kids. Well, yeah, but it is what it is. What is a man? A miserable little pile of secrets. Dracula, Castlevania. I don't think I would rat them out unless it's Peter stuff. It's not so much that I would rat them out. Yes, except for like breaking the law. And the only time I would quote unquote rat them out is if what they did negatively impacted other people, right? So their crime absolutely had an effect on someone else's life. In all other situations, I would convince them to hand themselves in. And then I would tell them, you either hand yourself in and you have a week to do so, or I go to the cops, or I go to whoever, right? But I do believe that you have to repent for the things that you do wrong. And here on Earth, the way that you repent is you go to trial, right? And then you pay your price, whatever that price may be to society. That's the only way it can be. You have to, justice has to be served. Otherwise, society is screwed. Any kind of abuse, kids or adults, we should stand up to. Lunch is now. Eating ham and cheese. Oh, shit. Nice. Ham and cheese sandwich. Toasted or plain? And if it's fucking plain, Britgirl J, I am judging the living shit out of you. It has to be toasted. There we go. There we go. Good. Good. I approve of that. I joined late, yo. Mystic Troll, how you doing? The fuck with kids or women, I can forgive most anything else. Yeah, I think abuse of adults is different because I think there's also a lot of I have to tell you guys this story. My father sent us a voice note on WhatsApp earlier today where he shared this story. It happened where they live, near where they live. This lady, there was a farm attack, right? And it was one guy that broke into their house, knocked her husband unconscious, and then wanted to, you can imagine, do stuff to her, right? And this lady, now this is the most on your feet thinking I have ever heard about, right? This lady, I think it happened in my dad's place, or he read it on the news or whatever. I can't remember the exact voice note now. I was busy doing other work while I was listening to it. But basically, so this lady says, no, I will do it freely. I will have sex with you freely, but can you please just take a bath before you do so? Right? If you take a bath, I promise I will have sex with you. You don't even have to rape me. We'll do it, we'll just do it. I'll do it willingly. And the dude got into the bath, started washing himself, and when he was all good and soaked up, she started beating the shit out of him with a pan, like a cast iron pan. Broke his jaw in multiple places. I think fractured his skull. He broke his collarbone and his shoulder, and I think a bunch of his fingers was broken. She was basically beating the living crap out of him, and he was all soaked up, so there was very little control that he had over himself. And I thought, what the balls on that woman to think in that moment how am I going to get myself out of this? Right? How am I get myself out of this? No, Brickwood, I wasn't talking about that being abuse. I just remembered the story as we were talking about this, about people abusing other people. And obviously that is the guy wanted to do abusive shit to the girl, right? No, I'm 100% happy with what that lady did. I personally think she should have gone further. But, you know, that's just me. But I do think there's value in being able to fight back, right? And teaching people how to stand up for themselves, whether that be women or men, because men get abused just as often. The difference is just men tend to not speak about it. But I do think there's value in teaching people how to stand up for themselves. But with kids, the biggest problem I have with kids being abused, and why I don't put kids being abused and women being abused in the same vein, is kids are completely and utterly innocent, and also, generally speaking, incapable of standing up for themselves, especially against adults. So when it comes to kids, I feel like that is just, it's like the biggest crime to me. It is anything against kids. Barmut, is this the first ever, like, are you only ever joining for the WoW, for the streams on Barrens Chat? Because it feels like only really an Akalon virgin would wonder how we got from WoW to this. If you've ever been on Twitch, if you've ever joined us on Twitch, you would know that we can go from talking about games, WoW lore, to talking about penises in about, like, one sentence. One sentence can be about video games, penises, and cars at the same time. It really just depends on wherever chat takes the conversation. And since, technically speaking, the podcast ended like half an hour ago, I guess we're now just talking about whatever chat wants to talk about. It always gets to penises at some point. Yeah, but you have to talk about penises. They're important. Everyone knows that. The penis is like the coolest thing ever. If you had one, you would understand. Thank you so much, Max, for the gifted sub, man. Really appreciate you. Can I have some hearts in chat, ladies and gentlemen? Some hearts in chat for the support. Really appreciate you, Max. Thank you, thank you, thank you, sir. I haven't heard any brisket talk yet, but I don't have brisket today. I have ribeye steak. I have 2 gorgeous ribeye steaks. Half a pound, I think. I don't know. I think it's half. It's 1 kilo. However that is, however many that is in pounds. Pulled pork barbecue, though. What about that? This may actually upset some people. I have never had pulled pork in my life. It has always looked phenomenal to me, but I've never had it. I've had brisket. I eat a lot of steak. I eat a lot of brisket. But I've never had pulled pork. Do I like barbecue sauce? Depends what you mean with barbecue sauce. Do I like barbecue sauce? Yes. Do I eat barbecue sauce? No. I love it, but I do not eat it. Give me. I'm actually probably going to make some pulled pork this weekend. Pulled pork is literally pork that is cooked to the point where it's so tender that you can take a fork and just pull it apart. Pulled pork, like literally pulled pork. So it's pulled apart into, well, you can either cook it not that tender, and so what you end up is more chunkiness, or you can cook it to the point where it literally forms strands of pork, right? Yeah, the other word for it is shredded pork, like shredded chicken. That I've had. There's nothing better than a shredded chicken and mayo sandwich. Toasted with cheese. Bit of mayo, bit of chutney. Mix that in. That is some good shit, bro. Pulled pork is shredded tender pork, and with whatever sauce you like or natural. I would have it natural, but if it's not on a Saturday, I would not have it with barbecue sauce, because barbecue sauce has way too much sugar in it. And I'm only allowed to eat sugar or anything else on a Saturday. Well, allowed. I'm a fucking adult. I can do it whenever I want. But I I will only eat other types of food on a Saturday. Every other day, I just eat meat. If it was up to me, I would eat ice cream for the rest of my life? No. It depends, I guess, on what you mean when you say eat ice cream. Am I eating ice cream and feeling like shit as a result of it? Or am I eating the ice cream and it has literally zero effect on me? And also doesn't make me gain weight. Because if I could eat whatever the hell I wanted and I wouldn't gain weight and I also wouldn't feel like shit, yeah, sure, I'd eat whatever the hell I wanted. There's plenty of really good food. The problem that I have is when you have like an ice cream, the next day you can feel, especially if you eat very clean like I do nowadays, if you have an ice cream, you feel that the next day. Like you feel that you did not eat clean yesterday. It was Max Elodie. Every day with shredded raw cabbage mixed with mayo. So good. You see Britt J lose the cabbage and lose the mayo. And we've got a deal. I'll eat the pulled pork with you. But no cabbage and no mayo. Unless you can make the mayo with... can you make mayo not using seed oil? Is that possible? Which chili? Oh, that sounds good. So can you make mayo with like olive oil? Or peanut oil? Tangy slaw can be really good though, Akko. Oh yeah, don't get me wrong. I like slaw. I just don't eat it. Yes, any oil, maybe not peanut. It's too strong. Okay, so not peanut oil. I've never had peanut oil. I wouldn't do vegan anything, though. The only time I'll eat something vegan if it accidentally happens to be vegan. But if I have a choice between vegan and not vegan, I will actively make the choice to go for not vegan. Especially the more ultra processed shit that vegans eat. That shit is just death. Like all of this mystery meat bullshit, I can't believe it's not meat. That shit is killing you so fast. And you're slurping it down because you think the corporations aren't killing you. That's funny. So yeah, I don't eat vegan shit. I only eat meat though. But if I could make mayo using olive oil, I'd probably have the shit out of that. Because I don't like seed oils. I don't know if seed oils are bad for you, but I've seen some studies that show that it's not natural. So I don't want it. Not trust them to not mix it with bad oil. You can make your own mayo. Yeah, I'll probably end up making my own. I try to make my own stuff nowadays mostly though, because, and this, I fucking kid you not. So I go to the store. I actually have the package here. I was super pissed. So I want you all to understand something. Do you see this? What does it say there? What does it say on that wrapper? It says beef snap sticks. Okay, so do you know what beef snap sticks are? It is beef steak cut into little sticks like this and then dried. All right? That's it. Americana native, how you doing, bro? That's it. That's how you make it. You cut a beef steak into little strips, dry it out, right? Either air dried or put it in a dehydrator, and you have beef snap sticks. Yeah, it's kind of like beef jerky, just better, in my opinion, because usually you only spice it with like salt and maybe pepper, maybe some coriander if you want to. This one specifically is chili. So chili flakes on this would probably be very, very good, right? Oh yeah, biltong's pretty easy to get. Now, ladies and gentlemen, that is how you make biltong. It could not be easier. Take a look, and I'm angry that I didn't check this. I ate it, but I am pissed. I will never buy this again. Take a look at that fucking ingredient list. The ingredients for beef snap sticks, chili flavored, should be beef, salt, chili flakes, maybe vinegar. Then where the fuck are all these other ingredients coming from? I wonder. If that is all you need to make beef snapsticks, beef, maybe vinegar, if you, like, you don't have to put the beef strips in vinegar before you hang them, salt, and chili flakes, because biltong does not go bad. Once biltong is dried, it will stay good for years. Years that you can have biltong. And it will be fine. So where the fuck? What are all these other things in here? You have things like salt flavoring. Like, are you telling me salt is too fucking expensive? You need salt flavoring? Like, why not just normal salt? It's the cheapest thing you can fucking buy. Salt colorant, for some reason. Hydrogenated vegetable fat, for some reason. Can't even say this. Sugar, of course. Acidity regulators. Anti-caking agents. Flavor enhancers. It's beef. You fuck, it already tastes pretty good. Capsicum extract. Oh my fuck. Herbs and spices irradiated. That's bad. Yeast extract. No reason why. Dextrose. Colorants again. It's beef. Why are you coloring it? Spice extract. Acidity regulators. Vinegar. Water. Acidic acid. Preservatives. Sodium benzoate. Potassium sorbate colorant. It is nuts, dude. Why? Why? This shit isn't that hard to make. Like, you can make it yourself. You can make it yourself. And this is the type of food you eat. I have paused on that one. Brickle J, the problem is I walked into the store and I was like, dude, I want a snack, but I need to have it meat. And I saw this and I thought, what's the worst that can be in biltong? Like, I mean, come on, biltong. And so I just bought it. I didn't even check the ingredients list. And when I took my first bite of it, I was like, this is not just beef. No fucking shot is this just beef. And then I checked the ingredients list and I was like, oh, this is anything but beef. Like, I'm actually surprised there's any beef in it. I would not have been surprised if it said beef-like fucking substance in it. It's annoying. It's not even that it tastes better. So when I go to the butchery, I can buy these things at the butchery, and then it is absolutely naturally made. Right? And I have a butchery just down the road, and they have these giant racks and racks filled with biltong and snapsticks and druivors and just literally any dried meat you can think of. When I go to them, it's natural, right? So they just do the beef, salt, pepper, coriander, maybe some chili flakes, whatever. And it tastes better than this. This has, you can taste the factory in this shit. I think original biltong is the best one. The one that looks like a bowl. Why do you not consume sugar, Brickle J? Jason, so it's kind of like jerky. Let me see if I can show you what it looks like, just so you get an idea. We call them snap sticks, or we call them chili sticks. But they look like this. Right? That's what they look like. All that, right? So it's literally just beef strips with, like, spices on them, you know? It's not like jerky, because with jerky, you guys usually make like a sauce kind of thing alongside it, which we, of course, don't. Our biltong doesn't have like a sauce that goes with it. It's just cured and dried with salt. Yeah, Brickle J, I'm the same as you. I'm the same as you. It's why I also avoid processed foods pretty much as I can. That's what we call dry jerky. Yeah, so this is what we call biltong. Or in South Africa, mostly they just call it TV sticks or snap sticks. but it's part of biltong. It's a different type of biltong. No, we don't have that in Hungary. Dude, you don't know what you're missing. Biltong is one of the greatest foods on earth. One of the greatest foods on earth. Downstairs right now, I have one of my naughty little snacks that I'm going to be having right after this stream. It is bacon biltong. It's bacon that's dried. And dude, that shit is fucking phenomenal. That shit is crazy good. Bacon dried. It is such an intense flavor for bacon that you have no idea. Cooked bacon is good. Dried bacon is better. Great, let me go I'll go fetch it. Hold up. All right, here we go. This one specifically is chili and paprika. It looks like this. Right? So, I don't know if you can see that. But yeah, it comes in a package like this. So yeah, this is what I'm going to be having after the stream. It's good. Although this one you have to make in a dehydrator. You can't really hang it because it's pork, and you'll probably fuck yourself if you try to hang it. Maybe you could hang it, but I think you well, unless of course what you're really looking for is the shits, then yeah, hang it and see what happens. If you like cheese, you can try fathead pizza. The hell is a fathead pizza? I don't know what that is. Fathead. Yeah, no idea what that is. Did the stream crash? No. I thought it crashed. Something fucking went super wrong. But I'm glad it's still good. Fathead dough? It's also a bonus that now you have a delicious snack teasing you on your desk for the next 3 hours. I mean, not 3 hours. I'm gonna eat that in a bit. I can eat it now if I want. Dude, it has such a great fucking taste. No, Matthew. So, outside of Asian places here, duck isn't a big thing. I've never even seen a supermarket sell duck, except for the Asian supermarket. People in South Africa don't eat duck. Okay, so fathead dough is just a mix of mozzarella and eggs. So here's what I've done. And it actually makes a pretty good pizza base, not gonna lie. If you don't want dough. Although, fuck that. Tomorrow evening is my pizza night. You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna head down to Pizza Familia, which is my local pizza joint. I'm going to order a fucking giant pepperoni pizza with extra cheese and hot sauce. And that is going to be my meal, man. And I don't give a shit. It's going to be full on dough, everything. And it's going to be the perfect pizza because it's my cheat day. I'm allowed to do whatever I want then. I'm really looking forward to that. But when I do want pizza, but I don't want the dough and stuff, here's how you make a killer pizza base. You take cream cheese with 250 milliliters or milliliters of cream cheese, 250 grams of mozzarella, and 3 eggs. First, soften the cream cheese, then mix in the 3 eggs with the cream cheese, then add the cheese shredded, and then just like a teaspoon of baking powder into that, mix it in. Then, if you can get hold of it, do you guys know what pork crackling is? Mirgas, I'm still here, yes. If you know what pork crackling is, it's basically pork fat that's fried, right, until it goes super hard, yeah? Take that and then smash it into, like, fine dust, almost like you would do if you wanted to coat something, right? I think in America you guys call it pork rinds or some shit like that. I think pork rinds is similar to pork crackling. Not entirely sure, but I think it's sort of similar. Yeah. Pork rinds is what you guys call it in America. So you take that, smash it up so that it forms little flakes almost, and then you put that into the base as well, just to give the base a little bit of a different texture, because the cheese and the eggs is going to create sort of like a smooth texture, and then the pork crackling just gives it a bit more of a doughy texture. It feels like it's dough. Then you put that into the oven, bake it for 20 minutes at about 180 degrees Celsius until it's sort of set up. Take it out, put your toppings on, put it back in, melt the toppings on top. Pizza. And it actually tastes phenomenal. Like, it actually tastes really good. Does it taste as good as a normal pizza? No, fucking of course not. It's not a normal pizza. But as far as keto pizzas go, I guess you could say, or carnivore pizzas, in some way, cheese is not always carnivore, but to some extent, it is really good. Need to get going. Take care, people. Charlie, take care of yourself, man. Dude, it's so good. I don't like egg. I hate the taste of egg. And this makes it so that it doesn't taste like egg. It doesn't taste like you're having an egg base. It just tastes really good. Oh yeah, Brittle J, I've done that. I would actually argue that beef or pork crackling actually makes the best coating for like deep fried chicken. One of the viewers actually told me about this 3 or 4 years ago. Because she was doing keto, and then I said to her, but I really like fried foods. And she was like, just try this. And she gave me, she told me about pork crackling that you crush up and then you use that as your deep fried coating. Bro, panko can suck my ass. That shit is Flavor Town. Like, holy crap. You get your chicken breast into some egg, into that shit. Holy crap. The flavor, the crunch. It is good. It is really good. And with pork crackling on deep fried chicken too. It's the best. Yep. Yeah, I mean, like, seriously, panko, nothing can get to that level of crisp and also that level of flavor. Because obviously pork crackling already has flavor to it. Oh, it's so good. It is so good. But now that we've spoken about food, I'm going to go make food. And then I'm going to have my bacon jerky. And then I don't know what I'm going to do. Probably make some videos. Because I still have some videos that I need to make. Is there any game that is releasing in 2024 that you want to play? Yes, so Manor Lords launched today. Absolutely phenomenal game. We've been playing it for the last week over on Twitch, by the way. Join me over on Twitch if you have not already. We don't play WoW on Twitch, but we play pretty much every other game or just chat match it, like now, every day, basically. There's another game that's really good that I've been playing a little bit. It's called Balrite. Just bought it yesterday. We played it a little bit on stream yesterday afternoon. Really, really cool game. As for games that's coming, I don't know. I don't really keep a massive eye on games that's coming, if I'm honest. Like, yeah, I'll rarely keep an eye on games that's coming. I'll just sort of find out a week or so before. Oh, wait, there's new games coming? Oh, I'll check it out. So I have to go look for games that's coming out. Isn't Path of Exile beta this summer? I'm probably not going to play Path of Exile, so there's that. It's not really my type of game. Path of Exile. I have Furthest Frontier. I've played that. It's really fun. Although I can tell you now, Furthest Frontier has nothing on this game, bro. Nothing. If you like city builders, this shit is going to blow your ass in a good way. This game was made by one guy. One man made this game. And it is deeper than any city builder game I have ever played. And it's only in early access. Took him 7 years to make this. And I'm so happy for him. He sent me a key to the game as well. I got the game for free. I'm very happy for him because the game became one of the most wishlisted games on Steam. It is good. It is super good. Lord of the base 8, no bees. Nice, Mystic. Just not in Manor Lords. We'll have to check it out. The Grey. Do yourself a favor, man. Do yourself a favor. Do you want me to show you quickly? The Grey. Thanks for that mind's eye visual. You're more than welcome, Kimmy. I like providing those. You know me. Let me just show you quickly. I'll quickly give you a quick overview of the game. The music is insane. Everything about this game is just insane, man. Here we go. Yeah, it's cheap as shit. It really isn't an expensive game. But I think this guy is going to make boatloads of cash. Boatloads, man. So here's my little village. Everything about this game is about logistics, right? So it's all about the logistics of the game. You want to make sure that where the goods are processed or mined, you want to make sure that those goods are processed close by where it's stored. So you have to think about logistics, farming, you farm houses over here, manor, so that you can tax the shit out of your people. And then if you go up a little bit, these are your resources. And then the point of the game is this, for now at least, this map, right? So you want to conquer each of these regions so you can take over these resources and defeat this dude, Hildebald von Björnried. And you defeat him by basically taking over these regions. And then, so for example, the iron deposits, making armors, building armies. These are your armies. Quickly show you what they look like. So if we pulled out our army now. See here? It's at this point, it's still just settlers, though. So these are just normal people You can see they don't have armors. They're just wearing their normal clothes. Gonna do their absolute best. Right? They're just gonna try at least. But eventually you can build armors for them. And then they'll just all go back to work. As you can see there. And while they're in that army, nothing's happening in your town because your people are fighting the war. At least your men are. So the women need to pick up the pace is the main fight. And then everything else. So for example, blacksmith is here. Make weapons and shit like that. It's like Settlers, yeah. So the best way to describe this is, if Settlers, this would be the spiritual successor to Settlers. 100%. It has the same feeling as Settlers. It's really fucking good. It is really fun. I love this game, man. I love this game. Anyways, yeah. Just wanted to show you guys. Pick it up. It's cheap as shit. And you're supporting a dude that spent 7 years of his life making this game. And he's not done. I think now with the money, he can finally get some other people involved in it. So we're probably going to see much more out of this company in the coming years. Definitely worth a try. If you like Sims, not Sims the game, but simulation games, and you love setting up things like logistics, so you care about games that really challenge you in terms of where you build what and how you optimize for logistics and how you optimize for distribution, this is the game for you. So basically, if you like Settlers 3, you'll love Manor Lords. Jan, how you doing, bro? When you say names, do you want the name of the game or are you asking something else? Because the name of the game is called Manor Lords. There you go. Manor Lords. Ah, fuck, I didn't even show you the best bet. Fuck. Hold up. I forgot to show you guys the best bet. If you were on the fence, this will probably convince you. If you're on the fence, this is going to convince you. So, as you play through the game, you start off with a very small village, right? Obviously. And you have these little things that you have to achieve in order to grow the town a little bit more. So, I have to get 3 level 3 plots. This means I have to upgrade these houses to level 3. And each sort of, so as you can see here, I need to have, in order to upgrade this house, I need a tavern, I need the church to be upgraded, and I need 1 more food type. Okay, see Mueller, how you doing, bro? Then I can upgrade to level 3. Now, why is that important? Because, bam! Now, if you were wondering, this may actually just push you over the edge. So, every single zone that you play in is going to influence where you're going to be spending your points in order to optimize your village for the region that it finds itself in. So if it's a region that has a lot of mines, you're probably going to want to go into deep mining so you can actually mine. If it's a region that supports a lot of farmland, you might want to go into heavy plowing, fertilization, and bakeries. Or maybe if it's a really tough region, maybe you want to go into irrigation and rye cultivation. This region that I'm in has very little food sources. So this became sort of the way for me so that I can trade at much cheaper prices. And as you can see, works in progress. There's still more coming. So yeah, there you go. There's policies that's coming still. We're still in early access though, so you're going to get different types of policies that you're going to be unlocking. And then eventually there's a production thing here, which I imagine is going to be the ability to control production flows, how many of everything you want, how do you want certain things to be prioritized, like your iron ore and stuff like that. Because right now, as long as you have wood, the Fletcher is going to make bows, right? as long as there are planks, the Fletcher is going to make fucking bows. So you can't really set to the Fletcher. I only want 150 bows, so stop at 150. They'll keep making until you have 10,000. Non-stop. So I think the production thing is where that's going to start to come in, controlling quantities and stuff of that nature. But yeah, check it out if if you're interested. I always like supporting the guys that make indie games, and this guy sent me a free key for the game during the beta already, and it's just free. I can play the game now, so yeah, support him, buy him. I'm not getting anything from it, but buy the game. I think the guy deserves it. They did a really good job on this game. But anyways, ladies and gentlemen, I think that's going to be it from me for tonight. I hope that you guys enjoyed the Barrens Chat. I should probably ask, did you guys enjoy Barrens Chat? Was it worth the wait? Because it's going to happen again next week, Friday. So if you didn't enjoy this one, then fuck, are you in for a surprise next Friday? Cheers, Zach. I enjoyed the stream, and hopefully till the next one. Oh, yeah. Remember that you're more than welcome to join me over on Twitch. I stream there pretty much every day of the week. And I let you know on Discord if I can't stream for whatever reason. Like last week, where I just didn't sleep at all. But most of the time, we do stream over there. But I appreciate you nonetheless, whether you come to Twitch, whether you don't. I'm still happy to have you here. Always happy to entertain you. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, be kind to each other. Be good to each other. And I will see all of you in the next one. Peace.